I fell off the narrow road again. I'm tired of the sin I'm living in. Who's gonna save me? I don't know. I'm down on my knees, I fell again. Who's gonna save this wretched man? Can anyone hear me down below? Don't despair, don't give up. We have a physician, receive his love. Death is lost, the cross has won. Partake in his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. A holy supper to ease my pain. Leaves without blemish or a stain. How could I ever get enough? These gifts that I come to take again can save a not so holy man. The water of life I need to grow. I look up to the sky and I hide your face from mine. But now I'm yours and I won't run away. Don't despair, no, don't give up. You have a physician, receive his love. Death has lost, the cross has won. I'm taking his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. Now leave behind my pride and let go of what's inside. I'm finally yours, I'll never be the same. Don't despair, no, don't give up. You have a physician, receive his love. Death has lost, the cross has won. I'm taking his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood.
Ahoy everyone and welcome to another live stream where today I have a very, very special guest with me. I have a Orthodox brother all the way from the United States who has a very interesting career. I have with me Jarren Babo. Jarren, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Sam. I'm blessed that you found my channel, well, my TikTok at first, but I actually deleted everything off my channel for a little bit. But I do have a channel. I'm glad you found me though, and I'm glad to be on here. I've been waiting for this all week, so I'm very excited to get going.
Great stuff. So if you could, obviously people probably won't know who you are. So if you could introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself, what you do, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you said, I'm an Orthodox Christian, recent convert. I was baptized into the church on Lazarus Saturday this year, so freshly illumined. But yes, I'm married. My wife and I have been married for about 2 years now. So well, we're on year 3 now. So we just had our anniversary, and I'm a salesman. I kind of had to find a job when I got out of ministry. So I went to sales because I still like working with people. But other than that, I am a musician. I like to call myself a musician, at least. Some people may say differently, but yeah, I'm trying to be a musician. So it's my dream to make music full time, and I want to include Orthodox themes in my music, and I want my music to glorify our church, glorify God, not in a liturgical way, but in a modern way where people, can be on their day-to-day life. Maybe in between chants, they can listen to some modern music if they love modern music. I know some people wrestle with listen to the secular artist, but they like the beats of the song. So I'm like, okay, well, how can I make Orthodox themed music sound modern, but not for liturgical use, obviously, just for someone's gym playlist or maybe someone's walking playlist or whatever it is. So yeah, that's it. I love camping. I'm a big outdoors guy. Other than that, I'm pretty simple. There's not too much to me. So
Oh, well, anyway, thank you so much for joining me. It's a real pleasure to have you on. We've been chatting a little bit back and forth, and Jarren kindly allowed me to use his song for the introduction. As you know, I usually have a version of Kyrie eleison for the introduction music, background music for the live streams and videos and things like that. But I think it went really well with the intro. It was a bit of a banger, not gonna lie.
yeah, I was honored. I'm like, let's go, man. This is gonna reach people, and I'm glad. It sounded great. The intro, the cross, and the fire sky looked awesome.
Great stuff. So let's sort of take it back to origins. Where did you come from? Like, what's your sort of initial background like with your family and things like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, in the United States. This is where I grew to half of my life. I lived in Ohio now, but basically I grew up in Erie my whole life. But growing up, I lived in a devout Catholic household. So my mom was she's an Italian Catholic, so it goes hand in hand. It's like Greek and Orthodox. If you're Italian, you're Catholic. So that's kind of the house I grew up in. My mom has always been super strong in her faith, and she does love the Lord, and she kind of led my father into faith. So yeah, it was growing up in a devout Catholic household. We're going to mass every Sunday, making sure that we're receiving all the sacraments. And I grew up in a pretty, as America would say, a Christian household. I try to stay out of trouble a lot of the time, and follow the 10 Commandments as I was taught in Catholic school, and go to confession and all that stuff. But basically, I kind of had that cultural Catholic in me where I didn't know, really who Christ really was and his teachings, but all I knew was that, there was a man who came and died on a cross, and I have to go receive his body every weekend, which I never understood. I never really believed it. I remember being a little kid in mass, and I'd ask my mom like a question during mass. She's like, shh. She goes, Jesus is there. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? She goes, his body, it's in the tabernacle. And I'm like, how? He died so long ago. There's no way. And why do we have his body? And it was just the interesting kid questions, when you hear about the Eucharist. So yeah, I kind of grew up with that mentality of like, okay, this is what people believe, I guess. So yeah, super Catholic household, we definitely weren't creasters. So my mom made sure she even went to daily mass, whatever it was, she really made sure that we understood the Catholic faith. So yeah, that's kind of what I grew up in up until maybe I was around 15. That's when some new stuff was introduced.
Okay, so tell me a little bit sort of how that came about, how that sort of change within your belief sort of started, and where did you sort of pivot to?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was about 12, 13, I really started, exploring the world. I started going to public school. As soon as I started going to public school, I got introduced to a lot of new things, a lot of sinful activities that I, as a Catholic, did not know were inherently bad. I wasn't necessarily taught to stay away from certain things. So it was just going to a public school where there was no Christian value at all. It was that changed it for me. So I started getting into, the popular crowd. I was really into sports. So, of course, I was kind of running with the jocks at the time. And I got into the popular friend group, and I kind of held that reputation from 12 to 16 years old. And of course, it progressed, and I went deeper into sin, and I'm sleeping around, smoking, drinking, doing everything under the sun that the American high school dream is. So I really got into a deep, deep hole. But this whole time, I was still calling myself a Christian. I still never knew what it meant to be born again and what it means to follow Christ, because I thought if we just went to church on Sundays, we're okay, and we didn't need to, really follow any rules. It's just like, as long as you go to church on Sunday, you're okay. And people who didn't go to church, I thought were a little weirder. And I'm like, yeah, it's just whatever. It's, but I go to church, so I'm okay. That was the whole mentality I had that whole time, wearing crosses around my neck, put a Bible verse in my bio. And by this whole time, I had no idea who Christ was. My mom was still taking me to mass every Sunday. I made our family go. So I would go do that, and then I would go party. It was just back and forth. I had no clue who Christ really was. So this happened all the way up till when I was about 15 years old. And I had this friend of mine who was in a class with me, and I knew him since I was in 5th grade. And he had this huge, massive conversion to Christianity. He was so passionate about Jesus. He was just so excited about how Jesus saved him and all this stuff. And I see him posting about Jesus all the time. And I comment on one of his posts. Well, on Snapchat, I actually slid in one of his posts. I'm like, hey, man, I'm like, that's cool that you're doing all this Jesus stuff. I'm a Christian myself, man. That's pretty cool. And he goes, yeah, but do you know Christ? Are you a lukewarm Christian? And he knew me. He knew me. He knew I was in the wrong crowds. He knew I was the popular high school kid who, denied just anything about Christ, so he knew the boat I was really in. And I was confused at the time. I had no idea what a lukewarm Christian was. I'm like, I don't know what you mean by that, man, but no, I'm a Christian. And pretty much there, then him and I kept having conversations about faith. And he started explaining what a lukewarm Christian was. And of course, he has evangelical theology, and this is new to me. I've never heard this evangelical talk about, you're saved not by works, you're saved by faith in Christ. But once you're born again, you're going to bear these fruits, and you're going to be a real Christian. And that's how people know you're a Christian. And, to an extent, it's true. Absolutely. Like, there's some truth in that theology that, you will bear fruit if you're a true Christian, right? So I believe that was an act of God in my life to help me understand that this Jesus thing is serious, that this is not just a normal walk in life. This is something you need to incorporate in your daily life. Jesus needs to be your everything. And he really introduced me to what that looks like, sending me a bunch of online preachers. And, of course, at this time, evangelical Christianity was making huge rise online. I think it was really there was a huge restless reform movement. I think it was the end of that era, but it was kind of like this huge online surge of people converting to Christianity. And I pretty much just trusted what he said. And I was like, you're pointing out these Bible verses that I've never read before. And I'm like, this sounds right. So I had a decision to make. I was like, okay, well, I examined my life, and I was like, I'm not following Christ. I see his point. This is not something that's in my life. So right then and there, I was in a big, deep hole. I was at rock bottom. I was getting in so much trouble, and I was really realizing that the party life and the secular life has done no good for me, and I was feeling the damage from that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to change my life. This is going to be time. I'm going to give my life to Christ, like he says. So I gave my life to Christ, and I pretty much became on fire. I mean, I was lit up with this fire of wanting to share the gospel with everyone and wanting to show how much Christ changed me. I lost a lot of friends. I lost the whole popular friend group. I lost a lot of respect from a lot of my other friends who I partied and drank with and did all the bad things under the sun with. I lost them. I lost just my status, and I got made fun of. I was getting made fun of a lot because I'm like, they're like, who is this new Christian dude? Like, Jarren, you're not that religious. We know what you've done. We know what you do. Like, this is not. And then no one knew how that actually changed. I'm like, this is actually me. Like, this, I'm not the same who I used to be. And so my friend Brandon, that's his name, him and I became best friends. And we had another guy, a kid named Isaiah, that was a really good friend of ours. And we were like the three evangelicals at our school that really were on fire for Christ. And we tried our hardest to convert everyone. We really tried to just change everyone's ways and be the light in high school, because it's a dark time in high school. It's really dark. It is filled with so much evil. So we were trying to be the light, and we became we were like a trio. We were just fighting and fighting for the faith while being made fun of, being persecuted. And so that really started the flame in me. And as I'm starting this flame, I'm still Catholic because I'm still going to church. So I have no understanding of why Catholicism's wrong. I didn't understand why he's not a Catholic. I was like, why aren't you guys Catholic? Like, what's going on? Like why do you guys go to this big church? And they started explaining the reasonings, and they introduced me to how praying to Mary is idolatry, and how it's too much tradition, and Jesus didn't call for tradition, and all this stuff. You know, the average evangelical arguments.
Chick-chack theology.
Yes, exactly. Just TikTok theology. I fell for it, and I was really mad. I'm like, this can't be true. I'm like, no, my mom's not wrong about this. My mom wouldn't lead us down this hole. And I actually started arguing with them. I'm like, no, this is right. This is absolutely right. Catholics are right to do this. It's okay. And I was having my mom almost, we were in a group chat all arguing about this. And I had my mom type an argument for me about protecting Mary and her perpetual virginity and all this stuff. And she was really trying to convince me that like these kids are wrong. Eventually, I got convinced that they were right. And they kept pulling these biblical arguments, sending me a bunch of videos. And me, a 15-year-old who doesn't know church history, don't know anything, I went with it because I saw how on fire they were for Christ. And I'm like, this is the route I need to go. So I became super anti-Catholic. I mean, I remember having arguments with my mom in our kitchen for 2 hours, like almost screaming matches on my part. And telling my family they're being deceived and that they need to repent and they need to come to my church, because I started going to church with him at the non-denominational church on Sundays. And my mom was just heartbroken at this. She's just like, where is he going? Why are they taking him this way? And she never understood. So that's really what kind of started the whole switch to being evangelical, especially as I got deeper into the church at the non-denominational church I was attending in youth group and creating more Protestant best friends. And, this was kind of the beginning to my light for Christ. I feel like I had the right passion and fire. I didn't know where to put it. And all I knew was non-denominational Christianity at that point. So yeah, we can go from there, but any questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of kind of similar to my my testimony in a way of, like, I describe myself as when I was growing up, I went to church because that was sort of like the done thing. That's what you did on a Sunday. I didn't grow up Catholic. I grew up in Church of England. And so having that sort of like, mentality of, you go to church because that's what you do on a Sunday. And that was sort of like enough. And that was, that was what you did on a Saturday. Sorry, on a Sunday. And I think, during that time, I people who know me on the channel will have heard me describe this before, but, I describe myself as what I call a wallpaper Christian. It looks nice on the wall, might be pretty with a bunch of, raised patterns or colors or, what have you. But if you peel it off, it's two-dimensional, it's floppy, there's a bunch of gunky stuff underneath, there's no sort of substance. It's just a pretty outward perception. And, and people often sort of summarize it as like, you talk the talk, but you didn't walk the walk. And so, you know, that sort of, you know, that's quite similar to my upbringing, and my sort of mentality. Just sort of, it'd be interesting to get your perspective on that sort of side of things, especially considering you grew up in a Roman Catholic background. Do you think there's a problem within the Roman Catholic Church of catechesis of people who are cradle Catholic? Because I mean, obviously you have RCIA, which people have to do their catechism to join the Catholic Church, you know, normally, if you know, if you're just coming in from the outside in. But if you're cradle Catholic, you know, because I heard you mention you went to Catholic school, do you think that's something that there's a problem at the moment within Roman Catholicism of not catechizing people who are, you know, who grew up within the church to defend the faith?
I definitely think at the time when I was growing up in the church, there was a huge problem with that.
Right. Okay.
There was. I say was now because online Christian apologetics has blown up in the last few years. I mean, and some of the biggest Catholic apologists, Trent Horn, Jimmy Akins, the whole Catholic Answers. I don't know if it was there during the time when I was like 15. I think it probably was, but I don't think it was much of an online presence when I was in my early teens and even in my really young youth. It wasn't talked about in church because evangelicalism wasn't as I mean, it was definitely popular, but it wasn't as in your face in the internet. So like, there wasn't a huge problem with people converting too much. So usually if you were a cultural Catholic, you stayed Catholic, whether the priest went into depth into church history or not, until I think the huge rise of social media changed the game. It changed it for everything. So I think as soon as people started seeing social media and seeing other faiths, I think that's when the game changed. But I believe when I was very young, there was no explanation of why we're Catholic. I believe that my whole story would have been so different if my priest went into church history, if my priest taught us why we believe what we believe and why we're different from other people. I think that would have changed the whole direction I would have went. Now, maybe, again, God's divine providence interferes every time, but I do think that I would have probably ended up in a total different direction, maybe still Catholic at this point. So I believe this all had to happen in order for me to find orthodoxy. But again, to kind of restate on your question, I do believe that there was a huge problem with the priest and the bishops not explaining why we're Catholic. It was all cultural. And again, my mother, it's not her job to do that to our family. There's certainly an element, but she's not supposed to be the spiritual leader in trying to pour into us why we're Catholic. You know, her job was to get us to church and get us poured in there. But now I think it's definitely changed with the online presence and people understanding what Catholicism is. So if that answers the question.
Yeah, no, 100%. So what year was that you changed to Protestantism from Catholic?
That would have, that would have been like 2019. Yeah,
okay,
right.
Gotcha.
No, actually, oh man. It would have been 2020, the year of COVID. That's
okay. Interesting.
The year of COVID, yes.
Yeah,
so that's when it all changed.
Yeah, because with me, I went off to Christian University, and and that was run by Elim. It was a Bible college in Malvern. It's in the middle of like hills and typical British countryside, that kind of thing. And it was actually there that I actually lost my faith because of a whole situation with, like, you know, gossip and slander and, you know, that kind of thing that sort of went on. And I sort of said to myself, if that's the best of the best of Christianity, I don't want anything to do with it. And that was around about, I want to say 2016, 17. Became an atheist for a number of years and then came back into Christianity in 2020. And I think obviously during COVID, I think that probably had a massive effect on spirituality and people sort of reconnecting with God in a big way, because certainly from what I've seen previously is that's when the resurgence of God sort of happened, is when people were shut in their homes, trying to find time to do things, and being bored, and then going on YouTube rabbit holes, and then ending up, finding some preacher online, preaching, a sermon on, what the quote unquote gospel is. And so, I think I'll be very surprised if there weren't, very many more people similar to ourselves who found sort of God that way through COVID, that sort of time. Because it sort of lines up in terms of like what I was seeing online in terms of like online apologetics, and that was sort of really starting to kick up into gear during that point. But before then, if you wanted to, back in 2016, 2017, if you wanted to find out an argument for something, there was very little out there. There's very, in terms, even, in any sort of resource, if there was Catholic resource, Roman Catholic resources, they were very, you had to be in the know really to know them. And then obviously you have, Protestant resources, you have churches who, stream the church services, and people who do like, little sermons and post the sermons on YouTube, things like that. But then during 2020, that's when everything sort of really started to ramp up, and then people started to become Christian content creators, so that's really interesting to see sort of like how God brings people in. And I think as well, I mean, obviously Jay Dyer started his sort of his career in online apologetics in, I think it was 2017 as well. So it's around, it all sort of lines up around about the same time.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, I know. So moving on in your history of, your journey to Orthodoxy. So take me through that next period in your life of, what it was like to be, within the Protestant circle. What sort of denomination did you become? What did that, lead you into sort of like any specific career paths? Like what was the trajectory of your life at that point?
Oh yeah, this is where it becomes a mess. This is where everything becomes a big mud ball. So basically, yeah, around 16, 17, super involved in youth group. And then again, I was attending a large non-denominational, technically Baptist, but not non-denominational church.
Yeah.
And we had 3 church services. I mean, it was 400 people at each service, like that type of big church. And youth group was so fun for me. I mean, I made the best friends, it was big parties every Wednesday. It was just huge, but I was really diving deep into the faith. I was reading the scriptures more and coming to an understanding of what doctrine was. And doctrine started changing the way I thought about everything. So I've always been, probably since I was 16, on a huge quest for truth. I wanted the truth, and I wanted the right thing. I didn't want any sugarcoating. I wanted truth. And when I was 16, that's when I found out about Christ and being lukewarm, that's when it all kicked. It was like, okay, well, what else have I been wrong about my whole life? So what's my first thing now? I'm digging into the Catholic Church. I'm trying to understand why, in the evangelical headset, why it's wrong to be Catholic. And I'm really listening to a bunch of online preachers. I'm listening to a bunch of online apologetics about, just low-tier arguments about how the Catholic faith was just corrupt. And I really fell into this, and I really was making my own gods on the internet. I was listening to John Piper. I was listening to John MacArthur. I mean, all the really super Reformed guys, even though I didn't understand what Reformed theology was yet. So this was super interesting yet. I was just thought they were just normal Protestant guys. But I had like Stephen Furtick, and I had a bunch of different preachers in there, but like just people who would show me that the Catholic Church was wrong. That's who I wanted to listen to. I wanted confirmation of what I was doing was right. So this was always in the back of my head. I was always into getting into what doctrine is right, starting to understand what's the difference between paedo baptism and adult baptism. Like, why do we not baptize babies here? And going into all that stuff, and is the body and blood of Christ really present in our communion? Like, getting into that stuff and going to the evangelical side of it and really understanding their position and going with it. So, man, I don't know if you ever heard of the website called gotquestions.com.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of my thing. That was what I went to for everything. Any theological question I had, I was there. And the odd part is gotquestions.com isn't ran by a specific denomination. They're ran by a bunch of collective different people who have answers for some stuff. So you might get a super reformed answer. You might get a super Calvinistic answer, and then you might get a super free will Jacob Arminius answer. Like, it was just two different things. And I was trying to figure this out. I'm asking God questions like, why does everyone have different interpretations of the Bible? Why does everyone have different blah, 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 blah? And I was just like, okay, I just need to pick a side and land on it. So that was going through the whole time. But as I'm doing this, I'm getting super deep with my relationship with Christ. I'm really trying to figure out what he wants with my life at this point. Like, okay, Lord, like, I'm all yours. What does this look like? Is this going to be missions? Is this going to be ministry? What am I going to be doing? Do you want me to be a preacher? And I prayed and prayed and prayed about it. And one day, my youth pastor at the time asked me if I wanted to share my testimony on a big, huge grace worship night. That's what we called them. And I was like, I would love to, right? I've never spoken in front of everyone. But this was something I was so passionate about. I would love to share my story. So after the big event and I shared my testimony, my youth pastor and I were washing dishes together, and he told me, he was like, hey, man, have you ever considered ministry? Have you ever considered becoming a pastor or anything? He goes, I see something in you, you should really pursue it. And I thought for a second, I'm like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to do any of this. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm like, I mean, maybe. I was thinking about being a missionary, maybe. And he goes, you should pursue being a pastor. So I was like, okay. He gave me a bunch of different options about, what colleges I could attend and stuff like that. And I thought about it. I'm like, okay, I'll think about this, because I was a junior. So I was approaching senior year. And I'm like, okay, this is probably the time where I should start looking into my future. What do I want to do after high school? As all that was happening, of course, I'm digging deep and deeper and deeper into the faith. I'm really trying to figure out what is the truth and why is there so many denominations. After I just found out there were so many, I'm like, what's Lutheran? What's Methodist? What's Anglican? What's Reformed? What are all these churches? And what's Pentecostal? Like, what are the differences? I'm really trying to pick apart, like, who has the right stuff, because I have so many questions about salvation. I had so many questions like, what must I do to be saved? What does this all entail? Is it by faith alone? Is it by, easy believism? That I got super into that. And like, I don't know, there's a huge debate online, and like, I don't know what years it was, but there was the big arguments between lordship salvation and free grace. I don't know, there's this huge online arguments going on between pastors about that. And I got into, that was kind of the first thing I got into, because I'm trying to figure out, what must I do to be saved? And people are telling me nothing. People are telling me you just have to believe. People are telling me, well, you need faith, but faith without works is dead. And I'm like, but how does that make sense? If he told me I just have to believe. I was just going through this whole system of being so confused. And at the same time, I'm still trying to defeat my Catholic family. It was almost kind of like we were enemies at this point. Like, I was Protestant, you were Catholic, and I'm trying to save you. And it was just this war, and it just sucked. It tore me and my mom apart. And this is kind of how it was going. And then when I think the first rabbit hole that I went down that tore me apart was when I found out about Calvinism. As soon as I heard about what the Reform movement believes, I was like, no, this can't be true. No, there is no way. There's no way that there's an angry God out there condemning people to hell from the beginning, like, who haven't done anything in their choice. Like, he just chose people for damnation. And I'm like, that is not that is not the God I know. That is not true. I'm like, do all Christians believe this? I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, there's no way all Christians believe this. So I'm looking into who believes this, and they kept bringing up Romans 9, all the Reformed teachers bringing up Romans 9. And that was a hard passage for me to get by, because I'm like, I don't want to believe this, but they're making this sound really believable. And I kid you not, my senior year, I spent almost 6 months trying to understand Calvinism and trying to understand my faith. It got to the point where I was getting sick. I was not eating. I was staying up day and night doing research, reading books, listening to podcasts, and researching online about, who has the correct position. Because you have the super 5-point tulip Calvinist telling me that if I don't understand this gospel, I'm not saved. If I don't understand that I'm strictly saved by divine decree, I don't understand the gospel and I'm not saved. And at the same time, I'm this 17-year-old kid who's just trying to understand the faith and who wants to be a preacher. And I really understand that it's important to teach correct theology. So this caused so much anxiety. So I'd stay up day and night researching. I wouldn't eat. I'd be in class all day. I'd have my earbuds in and I'd be listening to debates. I was not getting my homework done. I did not care. All I wanted was the truth. And it got to the point where I was crying in my bed, and I went to my mom, and she had no clue what I was talking about. No clue. She's so confused. She's like, "What's Calvinism? What do you mean? What is this?" And I'm just bawling my eyes out. I'm like, "I don't know, Mom. Like, I don't know what to say to you. I'm so confused." And this caused just a huge fire in my soul for truth. But at the same time, this caused so much damage. And I really just did not understand what the Christian faith was. I was at the point where I was like, okay, well, if this is the actual biblical position, I don't want to be a Christian. I don't want this. Just like your story. If this is what it is, I don't want it. No matter how true it is. I can't serve a God who condemns people to hell from the beginning without any of their choice or anything. Like, I just couldn't do it. So just like your story, I almost left the faith. I finally brought a packet this big, right, of all my research to prove how Calvinism was wrong. And I wanted to bring it to one of my pastors at that church, because there's like 8 pastors. I wanted to bring it to one of them, and I wanted them to explain to me that I'm okay and that Calvinism is false. And I was thinking that was the answer I was going to get. So one Sunday before church, I brought this huge packet, ready to debunk Calvinism with a pastor, just to help my anxiety. And I bring it to him, and I give him the packet, and he knows what we're going to talk about. He goes, "Jarren, I want you to know that I am a Calvinist." I lost it. My whole world was shaken. I'm like, these are my pastors that I'm looking up to. This is what I'm diving into. Like, I lost it. I didn't know what to do. I had to keep my composure and stay with him that whole conversation, acting like I wasn't torn apart, acting like my heart wasn't broken, and I had nowhere to go. It was such a fake conversation the whole time. I had to act like I agreed with him and everything. And so finally I went into the service and I was bawling my eyes out. I didn't want to be a Christian anymore. My friends had no clue what I was going through. The people who brought me to the faith had no clue, because they never looked into this. They never looked into anything that I was looking into. I've always been the one in that friend group to bring questions and challenges to some of their beliefs. And it was always really low tier questions, and I never got them answered by anyone, by pastors or nothing. I was like, I brought it to 3 youth group leaders, and 2 of them were like, "Yeah, it's true," and then, "But it's not true." They're like, they confused me so much, and no one could answer my deep questions. And I'm like, I can't do this. And so I said, I'm going to give them one more shot. I'm going to talk to the lead pastor. I did the exact same thing. And he's kind of hard to get to, because he's got a denomination of 1,000 people, right? So it's kind of hard to get on his schedule, and that's understandable. So I finally got on his schedule, and I brought him that packet, and I'm like, I'm at the verge of being done. I'm like, I need you to tell me if this is what Christians believe, if this is the historic belief. If it is, I'm done. And he pretty much told me after, he goes, you can stop. He goes, rest. You need to rest. You need to calm down. You need to rest. He told me how he was in college and his college professor had, it was in seminary, he had the class divided up. One side defend Calvinism, one side defend Arminianism, right? Free will versus predestination, and he had them come together and debate each other, and the class couldn't come to an agreement. And so the pastor's conclusion was, they're both in the Bible and you have to accept it. Somehow they both work hand in hand. And that brought me kind of peace, because I was like, that makes sense. Somehow God is sovereign over everything, but he gives us choice. He gives us choice. And that finally brought an ease to my heart. So I was like, okay, so I don't have to believe this to be a Christian. And he goes, no, you do not have to believe in Calvinism to be a Christian. And that's why I finally had relief. And I was like, okay. So now it's time to really start digging into my calling, because I started getting back in my faith again, and I was doing a lot better. And I'm like, it's senior year. And I got a scholarship to Lancaster Bible University, which is just a Baptist university. And I was going to go there. And I started dating this girl, and I fell in love with this girl. And pretty much from there, I really started not liking the idea of college, because I wanted to stay behind and I wanted to, start a life with her after high school. I didn't want to go to college. I just wanted to go to work. And so ministry started to just kind of wipe out of my mind. I was like, okay, I'll just be a minister of just being at my everyday job. I'm just going to be Christ everywhere I go. So I started to really hone in on, all right, now I need to go into construction, because I'm not going to college. So I need to start my life. I just graduated. I'm still dating this girl. And we had a rough relationship, because I tried to missionary date her. I don't know if you know what missionary dating is, if that's a term. Yeah, so I really tried to convert her. I really liked her. And
good old flirt to convert.
Yeah. I ended up somewhat converting her, and I knew it wasn't from the get that I needed a godly woman. I needed to really find a godly woman and just marry that. And I just couldn't find one. I wanted to get married young, so I settled and I tried to convert someone. And it was just a rough relationship. And we had our good times, but then it was just rough a lot of times, because I was just on fire for Christ, and she didn't know what that really meant. Like, she was confused with what I was doing in our relationship and stuff. And so this went on for about 2 years. And again, I'm still figuring out my calling. I'm leading youth group at this point, because you don't need a degree to lead youth group at a non-denominational church. So at this point, I'm leading little kids, and I think it was a 5th and 6th graders. I was leading a group with me and my buddy, and just serving the Lord any way I can. I started going on mission trips, and as I started going on mission trips, I really started to just really want to understand what my calling was again. And I'm like, I think it's missions. So I loved it. And at this point, again, I'm going back and forth, because I want you to see what's going on in my head at this time. In my head at this time, I'm still going down theological rabbit holes. I'm still going through, now I'm debunking infant baptism. I'm trying to debunk the Eucharist a lot more. And this started as I'm maturing in the faith. I'm starting to understand church history a little more. I'm starting to think like, okay, why do Catholics believe this? And then I've been presented the Catholic arguments. And so I'm like, man, it's interesting. Like, they do have some strong points about the historicity of some of their beliefs. And at that point, I believe God was poking at my heart, like saying, hey, you're going too far. And I'm poking at my heart, and I'm ignoring these good arguments that I'm hearing. And I'm like, no, that's false. There's no way. I mean, even if it was, I had the Anabaptist position that the church blew away. Like, there was no faithfulness. There was no continuation. So I thought, like, okay, even if they did believe that, it's okay. They're wrong anyways. That's why we have the scriptures. And I really started diving into sola scriptura and really understanding what it meant to be Protestant. Even though I was not a confessional Protestant, especially because I really denied Calvinism, and I really did not want to get into the Restless Reform movement. I still I was heavily Protestant. And I just wanted to stick in a position where I could stay Protestant but have these evangelical beliefs. So basically at this time, I'm still trying to figure out my calling, and it's missions at this time. And I chose to go on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic. And this is kind of a huge milestone where I met my wife. And my wife signed up for the trip too. My soon-to-be wife signed up for the trip. And we ended up going on the trip together, obviously. And we didn't know each other for the first 6 months of the mission trip meetings. We were just kind of seeing each other, and we did never talk to each other. I had a girlfriend, and it just wasn't going to happen. But I saw her. I'm like, she's so beautiful. Like, she has a heart for the Lord. Man, I have a girlfriend. I can't. I have a girlfriend. All this stuff, and I was like, it's not going to happen. But I kid you not. The weird part is the night before the mission trip, my girlfriend broke up with me because I was doing missions. She goes, wow. We're going on two separate paths. So she broke up with me. And that was God opening the door to my wife. Truly believe that. I was not planning on breaking up with my girlfriend. It was not in the plan. I truly believed that we were going to get married, even though it was going to be rough. He opened up the door to my wife. My wife and I fell in love on the mission trip. And from there on, I'm going to short up the love story because we're going to get to some of the meaty parts of the story. So we'll sum up. Basically, we fell in love on the mission trip. We got married 6 months later. So we got married. Wow. We moved to Ohio in the United States. And when we moved to Ohio, I'm working in construction. She's getting her master's degree in social work. And at this point, I'm 19 years old. So I'm still figuring out life. Still figuring out where I want to go and what God's calling me to. And I'm like, well, I just went on a mission trip and met my wife. Is mission's going to be the rest? And she actually encouraged me to look into being a pastor again. So I'm like, but honey, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to go to college. I don't want to do this. I just want to be a minister. Like, I don't want to pay, get all this debt. Like, if I could have some other training, if I could find some other way to get in ministry where I got maybe college for free, I would do it if it was paid for. So it's like, if someone could pay for my college, I definitely would become a minister. And at this point in this 2 years, I'm still figuring all that out in our marriage. And the first year, she's starting to notice some patterns in me. And this is the big part of the story. So I'm sorry if I'm boring you. This is a long story.
No, go on. Okay. Go for it.
There's so much depth into the story. I'm trying to keep it short. She's noticing some patterns in me that I get into these ruts where I'll be studying theology for a whole day and I'll be watching YouTube all day and I'm just quiet and I'm just I'm out of my head. I'm not loving her. I'm not focused on her. And she's always wondering what this was. Like, I'd have these days, and during those days, as Protestants we call it ecclesial anxiety. So I was believing to have this ecclesial anxiety of being in the true church. I just wanted the truth, and I'm really getting deeper into church history, and I'm just like, this is scary. This is scary. Like, schism is real. Eucharist has been a known belief for centuries. Like, this is serious. Like, am I making the right thing? Am I leading my wife in the right direction? That was my main concern. I didn't want her being misled, so I needed to lead myself. So at this point, we're trying all sorts of denominations. I became super reformed, actually, and that's the crazy part. There was something in me that changed. I became reformed because I decided to give up and I wanted to submit to someone. I wanted to submit myself to a teaching, and I wanted to believe it. I ended up submitting to the Reform camp because there was a possibility of me getting this internship at a super Reformed church, and I was going to be able to go under a pastor's wings. They were going to pay for college. So I'm like, I'm going to submit myself to this, and I'm going to become a Calvinist because I'm like, this is all secondary issues, quote unquote. That's all this was to me. It didn't matter to me. So it's like, okay, I can believe what I want. So I didn't care. I became a Calvinist. I started reading John Piper, really got into James White. I got John Piper's book that's called Does God Desire All to Be Saved? I don't know if everyone's ever read that. Super interesting book, and it convinced me to be a Calvinist. And I became trying to convince my wife of Calvinism now. And this whole time she knows I've been against Calvinism, and now I'm all for Calvinism. And she's curious, like, what? Why is he trying to convince me of this? I'm like, honey, this is the biblical position. This is where we need to go. After I kept praying and praying and praying, the position didn't work out. I think I made it to the final like three. There was like 500 interviews. I made it to like the last 3 people, and I didn't get picked. And this wrecked me. I'm like, I just became a Calvinist for who? Why did I just do this? I'm like, why does my theology depend on anyone? I should just be looking at this. So I was anti-Calvinist again. I'm like, no, it's not true. You know, if it is, it's whatever. I don't care. So at this point, I started listening to Francis Chan. I don't know if you know Francis Chan.
Yeah.
Yes. He started to be my pastor that I was listening to online and getting my theology from. And he's charismatic, but like not over the edge charismatic. And I was kind of interested in this. I'm like, man, like the Lord speaks to him. He speaks to the congregation. Like, I don't get that. I don't get spoken to like that. And I'm like, is it because I'm not charismatic? So I'm like, okay, I need to become more charismatic. I need to start understanding what the Spirit's telling me. I need to start getting tuned in with the Spirit. And I drove my wife through that. I got her to become more charismatic with me. I'm like, honey, we got to listen to the Spirit more. We have to really understand what he's saying. And, you know, doctrine doesn't really matter too much. We just need to love Christ. Like, this is it, right? And I'm still trying to figure out my calling for me. I still want to be a pastor, but I'm like, I'll only be a pastor if someone can pay for my college. So as I'm praying and praying and praying about this, this door opened up to a Church of Christ. And I had no clue what a Church of Christ was. Never heard of it. My wife introduced me. She's like, hey, there's a youth pastor position that's opening up in Andover, which was like 45 minutes from where we lived. And I was like, interesting. I'm like, what's Church of Christ? And we looked at their theology. And on their page, they were like, no, I'm not quoting quote for quote, but somewhere on the lines like, we are the continued church of the apostles. We take weekly Lord's Supper. We believe baptism saves, all this stuff about Church of Christ doctrine. And I'm like, hold on a second. I'm like, this sounds something that's like up my alley, because they believe baptism saves. And now I can be somewhat historical. You know, I can take that historical position, but I can be Protestant still. But they don't baptize babies. And I'm like, I agree with that. So I'm like, whoa, this is the church. Like, I found what I was looking for. I'm like, I have to apply for this position. And I got a hold of the church, and I got an interview, and, you know, we discussed college details, and they were going to send me to college, and I was going to become a youth minister while being in college. I was just going to get my bachelor's degree. I didn't plan on getting my master's or anything, but so I got the job. I got signed up for college, and it was a long process. I'm not saying they just hired me on the spot. That's not it. I'm just trying to shorten up the story. But we got to know the church, and they got to know me, and they really got to know my story and my passion for Christ and my desire for education, but not going to college to pay for it, because I didn't want any debt. So this all happened, and I became super Church of Christ at this point. I was super getting into the whole restoration movement, as they call it, and listening to Brockstone and Campbell and all of them, really trying to understand what Church of Christ is, how did it start, why I believe their beliefs, because they actually were scratching my itch. Like, this made sense. At the time, I was still charismatic. I was still messing around with, you know, maybe speaking in tongues, trying to get the gift of tongues, trying to be the early church. I just wanted to be the Book of Acts church. When I saw the Book of Acts, I just wanted to be that church. So I'm like, they have spiritual gifts. They believe baptism saves. I don't have to argue with Peter anymore. Like, I'm not arguing with him anymore. I agree on that. I'm like, okay, but, you know, the Church of Christ still doesn't have this, you know, the charismaticism I'm looking for. So I submitted myself to their teachings, but to an extent. You know, it was kind of to an extent of like, okay, well, it's secondary issues still. So sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think, because I can kind of sense there's going to be a change in the story. So I want to sort of go back. No, it's fine. It's all good. No, hearing your story it's actually made me think about something, and I think it might be a valid point. I mean, I'll get your thoughts, but from what I can see certainly from my own experience, but also, you know, maybe from your experience as well, maybe other people who may have had the same experience as well, is that if you're brought up in a Christian environment, whether that is Catholic, Orthodox, or, you know, even sort of like, you know, nominal Protestantism or something like that, and you have this sort of like this crisis moment, and you switch, and you switch, you know, maybe you go from Catholic to Protestant, or Orthodox to Protestant, or, you know, whatever, or Protestant to atheist, and then Protestant again. It's almost as if like it seems to me the root cause of all of this is a fundamental lack of catechetical teaching from a young age to firm up and to reinforce to people from that very young age, you know, what we believe, and these are the reasons why, and lay it out completely straight, so that everyone is on the same page when they're growing up in the church, that they can actually understand their faith and they are able to explain it. And I think what you were sort of doing at that point is trying to do your own catechism, because you weren't given one, and so you were trying to work it out on your own. You were trying to, you know, you're trying to find, you know, what is the true teaching of the church, what, you know, what is the teaching of the apostles, what, you know, how did all these different denominations spring up, and, you know, is this necessary for salvation, is this not necessary for salvation, and you're trying to sort of put the pieces together, you know, bit by bit over time, because of that fundamental lack of catechetical teaching, and sort of that strong, you know, emphasis on belief and faith from a young age. You know, I'm not blaming, you know, your mum or your church or things like that. I think it's just a fundamental problem, especially, you know, way back when you know, we were growing up. You didn't have that. It was just like you went to church on Sundays. You know, if you were young enough, you go out to Sunday school and they'd say, "Oh, Jesus is your best friend. Here, let's color in a picture of Jesus, and here, let's make an egg for Easter," or, you know, what have you. And then we go back in and we sort of show our work. Or, you know, if you just go to a church on Sunday, usually it wasn't really anything substantial in terms of like a sermon, or, you know, a teaching, or what have you. It was just sort of like, it was on a topic that a priest wanted to talk about that week. They may have had a visiting priest, or, you know, what have you. Right. I think fundamentally that's where a lot of people's crises of faith come from, is that place of, because you weren't taught the fundamentals, because they weren't reinforced in you from a young age, right, you eventually have this crisis moment of it gives you the ecclesial anxiety, because you have no idea what to measure it against. You have no idea, you know, no one is giving you clear answers, because ultimately this is the fruit of Protestantism, is everyone is just in chaos. You have, you know, how many thousand different denominations within Protestantism. You have different subsections of each, you know, denomination believing slightly different things, enough to justify them to be a separate branch, and it's overly complicated. And then, you know, like you were saying, you know, with, you know, wrestling with Calvinism, you know, you have things that are of essential nature, of, you know, and, you know, things being necessary for salvation. You know, you have people purporting the once saved always saved camp. You have people purporting the Calvinism camp. You have people, you know, purporting, you know, a mix and match of the two. You know, if there's anywhere you can fall on the spectrum, there is a church for that, because someone at some point in time has gone, "This is what I believe, so I'm going to go start my own church." And that's the problem. That's where all of this has come from. All of this Protestantism, you know, belief systems and splits and changes in different denominations have fundamentally come from a place of, you are your own pope. You interpret the scriptures in your own way. When you read something, you're trying to see a different position. You don't see it, so therefore you follow something different, and then you start a different denomination, and then that leads people down that path, and then someone in that denomination doesn't believe in something, so then they start their own church, and so it goes on. It's the snowball effect of there's no weighty sort of anchor to hold everything together. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh no, absolutely, and then that's what I think. In a previous conversation with you I had on the phone was how I described myself as a theological mutt, where I did not know what to believe. I just all I knew that Christ was Lord, and like you said, without any catechesis of understanding what you believe, you're blown by every doctrine, every wind, as Scripture tells us, and that was me. I was blown by every wind, and of course, I still look back and I think like, man, like, of course, like you said, it's not my mom's fault. It's not anyone's fault besides, the shepherds of the flock. What are you teaching your people? Why should they believe you? It's like, why can't they go down the street and hear the Lutheran pastor speak about this issue that you're talking about? So I totally agree with you. And I think there is a serious need for catechesis in any church I mean, of course, I don't affirm any other church, but even I think if you believe that your church is the truth, you should understand why it's the truth.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's only, I mean, especially with Catholicism, that's only really sort of changed more recently in light of social media, doing the catechesis for them, especially if they're cradle Catholic, if they've been Catholic for a long time. Priests now need to explain these things because these are the questions that people are bringing.
Yes.
You're talking about, people searching for the ancient church and, what did the church believe in the first, 1,000 years, or, what have you, what were the doctrines? Priests need to, you're seeing now within the Catholic Church, sort of movement, is you're seeing, more and more, you've got Father Mike Schmitz, you've got different sort of voices within the Catholic sphere, really sort of rising to prominence. Now, on the flip side is, those priests always knew those things. They always knew about church history. They always knew about, the importance of the church fathers and, what the church has historically believed, etc., on all these different issues.
Right.
But I think the issue, obviously has come from it. I think within Catholicism, it got too comfortable. It got too comfortable being the lead church, the branch of Christianity that has the most people in it. Was it now 1.1 billion people?
Is it out there? Yeah, I haven't checked that. I'm sure I know it's the largest.
Yeah, it's definitely over 1 billion.
Yeah,
are Roman Catholic. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, obviously, that's including like all the Latin countries and things like that, where it's just solely, Catholic.
Right.
But I think, your priests haven't had to have these conversations before because it's all been cultural. It's all been, it's been generational. And so you haven't had to have these problems. But then obviously in the rise of Protestantism, especially online and things like that, people get swayed and put, and so there's had to be this sort of whole shift in the church. But that's different to what Orthodoxy has historically done.
Yeah.
Is that Orthodoxy has been there from the start and has been slowly going in the background. Not making a song and dance about it, not advertising itself, not pushing, social media adverts and, things like that. And just slowly sitting there and going, I'm here if you want to know more. But no pressure. Just quietly in the background, just simmering away, creating a blanket of, and this is the thing, is that when I was Protestant, especially during my non-denominational days, all you would hear was, oh, you're either Protestant or you're Catholic. There was no mention of Eastern Orthodoxy. There was no mention of it. And that's what really sort of hit me for a loop when I found out about Eastern Orthodoxy is, well, what is this church? What does it believe? Like, I've never heard of this church before. I've heard of, Church of Christ. I've heard of, Quaker, I've heard of
Oh, yeah.
Calvinist, I've heard of Free Graces, I've heard of Roman Catholicism, you've heard of all these different denominations. I've heard of Calvary Chapel, Elim, all these different branches and denominations within Christianity, and companies and what have you have their own belief structures, and yet there's this one church that's sort of just in the background, very quietly, waiting for their moment, waiting for them for God to show grace upon the church, and to show generosity on the church, to get the church ready for what we are seeing now is this tsunami. I mean, it is a tsunami of people converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. You look at churches in America, you look at churches in England, you look at churches in Europe, you look at churches in Asia, you look at churches wherever there's Eastern Orthodoxy. Even there are people even converting within strictly Islamic countries who have no Eastern Orthodox church around them, who are completely convinced of Eastern Orthodoxy and want to become Eastern Orthodox.
Right.
I mean, glory be to God. It's a wonderful problem to have. We should. There's an interview that Josiah Trenham did with another Orthodox priest on the 10th anniversary of Rock and Sand, and the other priest was saying, our church is full. We've got no more room. We need to build another church building. That's going to take several years. Like, what do we do? And then Josiah Trenham said, I'm going to pray that they bring their family members. I'm going to pray that they bring their neighbors. I'm going to pray they bring their friends, everyone that they possibly can to your church.
Yes.
Because that's a good, you're going to have to do church outside. That's a good problem to have. And I think, this has been, especially in light of online apologetics, has been an absolute game changer for the church. Absolute game changer. So many people are hearing about Eastern Orthodoxy because of social media, and otherwise they wouldn't hear about it. And I think everything has been leading to this moment. Everything has, within church history, right from the word go up until now, has been leading to this very moment of where God is taking the church. Is setting up a long-standing line of historical members of Eastern Orthodoxy, people who are firm in their faith, who aren't bothered about or even convinced about anything else. They don't even care. They're concentrating on their own walk with God, making people who are humble, who are knowledgeable, having priests, spread out across the world slowly, getting the base ready, getting the foundations ready for that, the onslaught of people who are going to be joining into the church. And then having that sort of like, where have all these people come from? Like it's like they've come out of the woodwork, and obviously people to thank for that would be people like it'd be Petrus, Jay Dyer, people like Craig Julia, these sort of more famous online Orthodox personalities who've always been there. Even before they started the movement off. They started the ball rolling, and it's just sort of, especially in 2020 and going forward, it's been getting, especially in the last 2-3 years, especially, is really been going nuts. And it's such a wonderful problem to have. Sorry, that was very much a ramble.
No,
Apologies.
absolutely. I think that's a perfect point to add in the story, because I had no clue what Orthodoxy was yet. Never heard of Orthodoxy at this point. All I knew was the Catholic Church and Protestant Church, and that's the kind of crazy part. Even while looking into church history, even listening to the Catholic arguments, the schism's not mentioned. The schism's not mentioned. So I have no clue what Orthodoxy is. So all I know is that the Apostolic Church is Catholicism. That's all I know at this point. That's what they claimed. And so I think that's a great point. And, we're seeing my church, our parish priest is just getting bombed with so much catechumens. I mean, I got baptized with 11 other catechumens, and then we just had 11 more. Like, it is not stop. And glory be to God for it all. It's a great problem to have. But I think some of the priests are kind of shocked, like, where is this all coming from? Like you said, and I hate to say it, but I think online gets a bad rep for Orthodoxy. I think ortho bro is thrown around a lot, but the claimed ortho bros are the ones who are actually reaching thousands of people. And I think God is using the internet to reach people because he knows that's what we're glued to. And what are we praying? God is present everywhere and fills all things. So even in the midst of a terrible online world, he's present in the online too. And he's drawing people into his church from, honestly, not just a spiritual sense, but an intellectual sense. Because I purely think if you're not Orthodox, it's two problems. It's either a heart problem or it's a head problem. I think a majority of it is a head problem because I truly believe if you understood how Orthodoxy is the one true church, and if you understood how the canon of Scripture was made, there is no way you can remain Protestant. And again, I didn't understand this. So at this point, I became the youth pastor. I'm going to make this part kind of shorter because I know we want to talk about the music part. I'm forgetting that we're talking about the music part too today. So,
it's all good. No. We've got acres of time. Don't worry, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. So at this point, I'm a Church of Christ youth minister. And I'm really getting into the doctrine, like I said, and I was submitting myself to what they had to teach, but I was still being charismatic. So my buddy and I, he came back from the army, and he found his faith, and he was on fire for the Lord. So, and he was super charismatic at first. And so I'm like, this is the guy I want in my life. I really want to start getting connected with him again. And so him and I start hosting revival nights. And, these revival nights, we're just throwing our hands up around a circle, just trying to hear from the Lord and just trying to, really just, we have like a group of 10 people just trying to share messages with the Lord. Like it was really odd revival nights, but at our time, that was us trying to hear from God. And that was when God would speak to us. God would speak. But at this time, he was introduced to Orthodoxy. And I knew that this was not good because I knew a bunch of young men were converting because at this point I was hearing about Orthodoxy when I was looking into the Catholic Church, and I finally found the online Orthodoxy theme. So this is about a couple months into my job. I'm starting to hear about this Orthodox, but I think they're just Catholic without a pope. That's all I think about them at this point. I don't know any depth. They're just Catholics, like Catholics without a pope, another schism. Oh, well. I'm like, they didn't mean much to me. And I saw him getting into the kind of apostolic teachings, and I'm like, dude, I'm going to warn you, don't go down the rabbit hole like I did. You will get confused. You will get scared, and your faith's going to be shaken. And he didn't listen, and glory be to God. He went down the hole, and he started looking into what the early church fathers taught. He was looking into what they believed about baptism, about confession, about the Eucharist. And at this point, I'm okay with people believing this stuff as long as, they're not pushing it on me, whatever. It's a secondary issue in my head, whatever. But he really started bringing the case to me, dude, I might convert to Orthodoxy. I'm like, you don't need to do that. We can do that. We can have that. We can have Orthodox elements in our worship. So we both kind of fell for that because I was really starting to crave some liturgical worship. Oddly, there was something in my heart that was changing. It's like, okay, maybe this huge non-denominationalism and charismaticism isn't the best thing, and maybe liturgical is good. Maybe it's okay, because I was starting to miss a little bit of the Catholic Mass. I was really starting to be convinced of the real presence in the Eucharist because Francis Chan, the guy I was listening to all the time, he made a big statement about the Eucharist. I don't know if you saw that clip from him.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
you remember that? Yeah. So he started believing. I'm like, okay, well, he believes it. I think it's okay for a Protestant to believe in real presence. And I'm like, I believed it as a Catholic, so why not? So why can't we have the real presence in our Eucharist? And so him and I started creating these revival nights. And in the revival nights, we would have confession. We would partake in the Eucharist. We would teach that it was the body and blood of Christ. And we would sing songs, and then we would share testimonies. That was kind of the big thing. I'm like, okay. I'm like, Jake, we're doing good. We have the apostolic elements in our worship nights. We have the charismaticism. We have the Reformed teaching. We're kind of like a mesh. That's why I'm talking about theological mutt. I didn't know what I was. I just wanted to be a buffet Christian. I was picking and choosing from each buffet that I could get, right? And at this time, we started having a few more, and my heart was just being tugged to keep looking into the church history, to keep diving in, and don't stop researching this just because you're a pastor now. So I really started digging into it, and I started listening to Catholic testimonies, and I knew this was kind of a bad thing for me. I'm in my office, in my job, and I'm supposed to be preparing sermons. I'm supposed to be prepping lessons for the kids, planning youth events, and I was doing that. But I'd get to the office super early so I could do my theological research and get my brain scratched a little bit. And I was listening to a bunch of Catholic conversion stories about pastors like Scott Hahn. Is that one of them? How he converted, and a bunch of just Protestant to Catholic testimonies. And my world was rocked again. My world was flipped upside down because I'm listening to these things. I'm like, I just became a youth minister. What am I doing? Like, I have the weight of these kids' souls on my hands. I need to be preaching truth. Like, what is truth again? And I'm done. I'm freaking out at this point because I'm being convinced of Catholic theology again. I'm like, this makes sense. They start talking about how the real presence has been the belief since. They're quoting Ignatius. They're quoting not John Chrysostom, but a bunch of different church fathers. They're quoting about the Eucharist and how it actually is the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And I'm like, I can't deny it anymore. What am I doing? I'm lost. I'm like, I just got this job. I can't leave. Like, I love these kids. I built such a good rapport with these kids, and I built such a good rapport with my elders, and submitting myself to them. And I loved my job. This was my heart. I thought this was my calling. I finally had my dream job, and I'm like, I can't leave. I cannot leave. So there's this war going into my head for weeks about, go back to the Catholic Church, stay here. God's called you here. Go back to the Catholic Church. Back and forth. There's like a devil and angel on my shoulder, but I didn't know which one was which. And I pretty much made a decision to go talk to a Catholic priest. And I knew I was getting into deep trouble. I knew that this could go two ways. Either I stay where I'm at, and all the information that I just learned about the apostolic faith and how it's not Protestantism, and I could sit there and let my conscience be tormented like I am now, or I could make the jump, go back. So I actually made the decision to go talk to the priest. And the odd part was, when I talked to the priest, I was even more confused because he told me that I could stay at the Church of Christ if God called me to stay there.
That's wild.
I'm thinking he's going to tell me to convert. I'm thinking he's telling me, you need to go back to confession. You need to do this. You need to come back to the church. None of that. He was just like, you can stay there if you're called there. And I was like, that's not what you guys teach. I'm like, I know that's not what the councils teach that you guys have. Like, I know the salvation claims, but of course, Vatican II.
Yeah, it's the fruit of Vatican II. Yeah,
it's totally different, right? So I'm like, I'm lost. But at this time, my buddy's still getting into Orthodoxy. He's getting engulfed in the saints, and he's really changing his mind. He's like, man, I might convert. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do. I'm like, I want to become Catholic again. So I'm just like, but I need to go to a traditional Latin Mass. That's what I need. I need to go back to traditional Catholic. So I started attending a Latin Mass, and I actually went back to confession. And I was received back into the church, because once you're baptized, all you need to do is go to confession and get received back into the church. That way you can partake of the Eucharist. And I loved the Latin Mass. I'm like, oh, this is so beautiful. I'm like, this is what I need. This is home. This is home. I found my place. I'm like, this has got to be it. And there was still just something that was just scratching my brain. Like, is this it? Like, what about Orthodoxy? Like, what about them? Like, why aren't they? How can they claim to be the church but be separated from the Catholic Church? I was like, you can't do that. And
I just want to sort of just really quickly, I want to sort of jump in and ask, what was your home life like during that point of, jumping to Catholicism and things like that? How did your wife take that?
Oh man, my wife was wrecked. If you ask her, she was bawling her eyes out when I told her I went to go talk to a Catholic priest. And of course, she grew up Baptist, like, super, anti-Catholic family, and it just wasn't like Catholicism was not in the vision whatsoever. So when I sat her down and told her about what I was wrestling with, she was tormented. She was distraught. And I know. And she's like, we just moved out to here for your new job, bought a house. What do you mean you want to become Catholic again? And the story gets so odd from here because I feel like I'm dragging her around like a rag doll. I'm just taking her from place to place. Like, come with me here. Come with me here. Come with me here. Like this, I finally found the place, right? Oh, I hate to do this, but I might have to take out my mic right now because my charger, my battery life is terrible, and my mic port blocks the charging port.
That's fine.
My battery's running.
Yes.
Yeah, is it going to be okay? We can test it out real fast.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Go for it. So you're muted at the moment. You'll need to change your mic over. And then you'll need to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm having it.
Is it no? Okay, Sean. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're all good. Don't worry. I'm having technical issues at the moment.
Of course.
It all seems to be going downhill.
Satan's trying to pop up. We're gonna get him out of here.
Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
I'm back. My camera decided to just time out and just turn off.
I get it. It's technical. I hate it. Technology. I'll
just as we get to orthodoxy as well.
I know. I'll put my mic back in soon once I get this computer charged up. The battery life sucks. I thought it would last the whole time. But if this sounds okay, I'll keep going.
Yeah, come on. That's fine.
Okay. So, as I was saying, my home life my marriage was being messed with. I was just dragging her around everywhere, and she had no clue what any of this meant. She goes, "What do you mean becoming Catholic?" She goes, "I don't agree with any of that. Like, no, I don't want to be Catholic. I don't know." I'm like, "Honey, like, I just need you to trust my guidance. I really believe like we need to go back to the Apostolic Church. This has to happen. I know this sucks." And at this point, of course, I'm still the youth minister, and no one knows what's going on until I talked to one elder. I took an elder, and we went on a walk, and I told him what was going on. I'm like, "Listen, the Catholic Church is making some weighty claims that I'm starting to believe. Like, I need your help. If you can convince me otherwise, I want to stay. I want to lead these kids. These are my people. Like, I need your help, though. I need to understand what I'm going through." And at the time, people were like, "Why didn't you talk to your pastor?" Right? Well, the lead pastor of the church, he didn't want to talk about it with me when I did bring stuff like that up. He just kind of wasn't interested in that subject. He wasn't interested in church history, and I respected that, so I went to another elder. And because technically the lead pastor wasn't supposed to be my leader. It was supposed to be the elders. That's how the Church of Christ works.
Yeah.
So I told the elder, and he tried to convince me otherwise, that it's not true, that the Catholic's teachings are heretical, and he goes, "God brought you here for a reason, so I don't know why you're going through all this," and blah blah blah. And I was distraught again because I'm like, he tried to convince me to stay. He brought up all these good reasons to stay and why I'm called here. And I'll tell you this, when you're in that position of, did God call me here versus this makes sense, like the other hand is, this makes sense to convert. Like, it's the only thing that makes sense. And the other one is, but God. But did God call me in this chaos? Like, was I supposed to be here for a reason? And so I was wrestling with my conscience back and forth, like, no, God called me here. I can't leave. And the other one's like, just make the jump. So I was tormented for weeks going back and forth between this. And I eventually was actually about to give up. I was about to just stay where I was because I'm like, I've been through this before. It's led me to nothing. I've been through this whole theological mess. God called me here. I'm staying. And I thought I was staying. And my buddy, he actually made the decision that he wanted to be Orthodox. He's like, I'm going to convert. And I'm like, good for you, man. Like, go ahead. Go right on. You know, I wish you the best. I believe Christ is in all the churches. So, you know, go ahead. And he converted. But one day, again, this whole thing got brought up again. And I started going to mass again. It was back and forth, back and forth. So I went to mass again, and I was like, you know what? I can do both. I can be a Protestant, and I can be Catholic because it's secondary issues. So it's like I can go to Catholic mass just like the one priest told me to, and I can still be a Protestant. So I was actually going to do that. I was thinking like this is just going to be quiet though. I'm not going to let my elders know about it. I'm just going to go to Catholic mass and then teach my youth group, right? And I was going to teach them Catholic teachings. It's not like I was going to indoctrinate them. Like I knew the lines. And I just decided to start going to mass again. And I'm like, he's going to become Orthodox. I'm like, yo, that's cool. Like, you know, we're both apostolic churches, you know, like, oh man, yeah, that's really cool, man. And he was like, no, it's not the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's the exact same thing. And we made a deal. I said, listen, man, one night I will take you to mass. It was a Friday night mass, and then a Saturday night mass, and then you can take me to an Orthodox. I called it mass at the time. I didn't know that they didn't call it the mass. He goes, all right, I'll take you to a Vespers. And I'm like, what's a Vespers? And he goes, well, it's where they're pre-sanctifying the liturgy and they're getting ready to receive the Eucharist the next day. I'm like, okay, you know, I would love to. So I took him to Catholic mass, and he was like, yeah, you know, whatever. It wasn't much of a good thing to him. And then he brought me to liturgy, and this is when the game changed. He did not liturgy. He brought me to Vespers. So I went into Vespers, and the smell of incense just filled the liturgy. Seeing the huge iconography in the beautiful painting of the Theotokos behind the altar, in the candles, I knew I was home. Something in me. And again, I'm not drawn just by aesthetics. I want to make that clear. Like the bells and whistles, of course that's nice. Of course all that's great. And the bells and smells is what they call them. But that's not what converted me. I just believe it was the Spirit of God smacked me in the face that night, and I knew I was home. So after I experienced that first Vespers, we got to talk to the priest after. I got to ask all my questions, told him everything, and he was actually a Protestant minister too. He converted to Orthodoxy, so him and I connected on a lot of things. And I told him, I'm like, I know I have to quit. I know I have to drop it. And I have to come here. And he goes, this could be the hardest thing you've ever done. And he goes, you have to do it though. He goes, I'm not telling you to do it. You do your research, but if you're convinced that this is the truth, you need to come here. So that's where things changed right there, man. We can go into that a little bit later, but any questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always difficult when you're converting from one branch to another, from one sort of aspect of Christianity, and going to Orthodoxy and things like that. I don't think people understand fully when they're sort of getting into that rabbit hole how much what's the word? How much you give up, how much you lose, how much is at stake oftentimes, because when you're dealing with a lot of these different issues and bits and pieces, you're brought into this sort of, because Orthodoxy is very exclusive. It's very exclusivist. It's we've all heard the phrase orthodoxy or death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, I think people don't understand until it's time to convert, until it's time to sort of, even, maybe even start down that journey of just how much you will lose. I mean, I remember when I was doing my, because I started to do TikTok live streams and do like mini little, Bible studies, with my Christian friends and things like that. And I fell into a very toxic crowd of, Christians who are very anti-Catholic, very sort of like, faith alone, that kind of thing, and reading the Bible and making sure you have an understanding of, the Bible, and that's the correct understanding of the Bible is your understanding. All that sort of, well, to want of a better term, the British phrase I think springs to mind is a load of bollocks. But when because I started to, I mean, obviously I grew up with things like Chick tracts, right, and Chick tract theology, and very anti-Catholic, anti-popes, and all that kind of just absolute, just even I will say that none of those arguments hold water, especially with the Pope. It's just so just incredibly low tier that even I could refute all of those points about what Catholics believe about the Pope, because it's just stupid. But growing up, I had that sort of in the back of my mind, and then obviously going forward into my newfound sort of Christian worldview and ideology and things like that, I just sort of get to that point of, well, I'm going to do a really cool thing for my friends. I'm going to prove that the Catholic and Orthodox churches, and it was at this point I'd started to hear a little bit about Orthodoxy, come across the odd sort of video here and there. I'm going to refute the use of statues and icons. They obviously they're idolaters. They violate the second commandment. So I'm going to write a paper. I'm going to prove that. And the more I looked into it, the more I was just like, oh. It was a very humbling experience. It was very just sort of like, wow, okay, so they don't violate the second commandment. Then they're not idolaters. It's very biblical. It's biblically based, and that sort of started in my head. If I was lied to about that, what else was I lied to about? And then that sort of went into, I mean, I started asking the question that Pilate asked Christ in John's Gospel: what is truth? That's a dangerous question to ask.
Yes, it is.
And and people who know the channel and heard this story 1,000 times before, but I still keep on talking about it because it's still a good thought. Is I liken myself to the woman who's bleeding for 12 years. Not that I'm female. Obviously, I'm very macho man. I have a beard and all that kind of thing. But I liken myself to the woman who's bleeding for 12 years because she had such faith that she was going to reach out and touch the hem of Christ's garment and be healed. And Christ, feels the power leave him and says, "Who touched me?" She says, "Yes, it was me, Lord." And he says, "Your faith has made you well. Go and sin no more." I wanted to stretch my hand back through time, past all of the denominations, all of the biases, all of the schisms, all of the corruption, all of the greed, all of the, scandals, etc., and just grab the hem of Christ's garment and follow that thread back through history. What did Christ give to the apostles? What did the apostles teach their disciples? What did those disciples teach their disciples? And have an understanding as well during that point of the Jewish mindset is one of preservation. And obviously, these people were culturally Jewish, and so that's ingrained in them from from when they're small, growing up within Jewish synagogues and things like that, and Jewish ideology. And obviously, these people are converting from Judaism to Christianity, especially in the early years of the church, because that's basically all there was. I mean, you have obviously the pagans, the Gentiles, coming over into the faith, but then also you have the Jewish sort of roots of it as well, that sort of mindset. And so they're sticklers for preservation, they're sticklers for, and that gets reinforced in the church right from the word go, of this is a jewel, a precious jewel that we've been handed from our Lord and the Savior, of God himself. We need to keep this, we need to preserve it. And so, that sort of leads you down that rabbit hole of, I wanted to stretch my hand back through time, follow that thread through. And that led me to some wild places. It fundamentally shook me to my core, I mean, I was at one point I was going to become Catholic. I was going to, looking into RCIA and, looking into the papacy and things like that. But God really swiftly shut that door for me. Just like, no, I do not want you in the Catholic Church. Keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Keep pursuing. And obviously, ending up within Orthodoxy. But I mean, so for you, what, obviously you're about to have that sort of conversation with your group of elders. How did that go?
Oh man,
I'm assuming not well.
Yeah, I'm shocked of how it went. No, it wasn't how I expected it to go. I'm kind of glad it maybe went this way, but I was still very shocked with how it was handled. So at this point, like I said, after that Vespers, I talked to Father, and I was like, how do I do this? How do I leave everything I built there? How do I tear someone's heart apart in a truthful way? Like I need to be truthful with them. I can't just keep going in what I'm living in. I'm living a lie. I don't believe their theology. I'm convinced of the apostolic faith. I can't keep going. And he told me how he did it. And his story was very different from mine because at the time, again, when he converted, Orthodoxy wasn't present online. There wasn't big apologetics going on. It was just Orthodoxy was viewed as another Christian denomination. Like, it wasn't a big gap. Like, there was no huge difference. It was like, yeah, I mean, wherever you go, if you believe in Christ, it's all good. So his youth group sent him off with a cake. They had a party for him, and they sent him off in the nicest way. They wished him the best and everything like that, and they did it. So I'm thinking maybe mine will go that way. Maybe I'll have a really good reaction, and out of the innocence and ignorance of their knowledge about what Orthodoxy really is, that it would cause less problems. It was the opposite. It was the total opposite. So I'm the week that I know I have to let it go, my wife told me, she goes, you need to do this week. You need to do it now. Like, I'm tired of this. She goes, we need to make up our minds and we need to stay. I'm tired of this. She goes, Jarren, I'm willing to follow you wherever. I trust that you know where you're going. I trust that you're making the right decision. I trust that God has revealed this to you, but I can't be in the middle of this anymore. I need you to make the decision and drop the church.
Yeah.
I knew this was the time. Yeah.
Just on that really quickly. So what was her journey like towards Orthodoxy?
So yeah, I missed out on a huge part, I guess. So after I talked to Father, I knew Orthodoxy was the way, right? So she already knew I was on the journey to the apostolic faith, and we made a trip. This was before I took her to any liturgy, or before I knew about what the Orthodox Church had to offer. We took a trip to Indiana, and I've always loved going to view beautiful churches. I've always loved seeing the architecture. I mean, I'd visit even some big Anglican, Lutheran churches that had beautiful architecture. I'd visit them, and that was kind of my thing. I loved seeing church architecture. So one time we were in Indiana, and this was a week before this all kind of, when I found Orthodoxy, I was like, hey, like, we had nothing to do. We were moving her sister into her college dorm, and that's why we were out there. I'm like, hey, I've got nothing to do. I'm like, do you want to go thrift shopping? Do you want to go see churches and see who lets us tour a church? And she's like, yeah, I'd love to. And I'm like, well, do you have you ever seen a Catholic church? Like, have you been there? She's like, yeah, I've been in one and stuff. I'm like, cool. Like we should go see a big cathedral around here or something. And we ended up finding this beautiful cathedral in India. I'm forgetting the name of it. But they let us tour the church. They let us go in, and she's amazed. She's amazed at the iconography. She's amazed at she felt, and like Catholics do have, they have a reverence for God. Like, obviously, because they're from the Orthodox Church. They have our roots. So they're going to have some of the elements that we have in our worship.
Yeah.
And she was truly changed by the beauty of the church, because she grew up with white walls church, maybe a picture of modern painting of Jesus in the church hall in her basement, whatever, in the basement of the church, whatever. That's all she had. So she did not have this reverence and this beauty for God's churches. And so she's crying. She's crying because there's an organ that's playing, and it's playing this beautiful melody. I think it was a little like manipulation of like the emotional lyrics, emotional music, but it was kind of moving her, and she just sat in the pews and she looked at the crucifix and she was bawling. She just could not believe the beauty in what she's missed out on. She still wasn't there theologically, absolutely not there. But after that experience for me too, I'm like, how could I not have this in my church, in my life? How could I not have this reverence and beauty? We need to go back. So her and I had a good conversation after, and this was after the whole telling her I want to be Catholic thing. And she's understanding now. She's understanding. She's putting pieces together. Like, I see why, I see why you don't want white walls and, a little podium. I see why you're digging this faith. And so she actually started making a little bit of a jump. And that's when she started really understanding and trying to follow me. So I'm trying to explain to her the doctrines of the church and why we're different from Protestants and the differences. And this is all new to her. She's never heard of any of this. So at this point, now we'll fast forward to when I told you, she told me I need to quit. I need to do this. At this point, she's been to maybe 2 liturgies. No, she hasn't been to a liturgy because I couldn't go to liturgy yet because I still had Sunday morning teaching to do.
Yeah.
I was still at the church, and so she went to Vespers, and she understood. She was mad, though. She was angry with me. She was mad. She understood, but she was mad. She was just like, why? Why is this all happening? But, like, I see you, Jarren. Like, I want to follow you, but I can't get behind praying to saints. I can't get behind the whole Theotokos thing. I cannot get behind kissing icons. She goes, she saw me kiss an icon, and she was like, what was that? She had no, sorry, dropped my phone. She had no clue what this all was about. So culturally, it was a shock to her. She's like, this can't be right, that she trusted me. So out of her anger, I think she said that because I was so back and forth. I was so back and forth with my theology, she was done. She's like, you need to make the decision, and we need to stick with it. So that's kind of what her journey was looking like now. But now, she loves it. She's in love with the faith. Her patron saint, her name's Elizabeth, and she chose Elizabeth the New Martyr. It was just her feast day the other day. She fell in love with Orthodoxy as time progressed, and she really is developing her ethos, and she's really understanding what it means to be a true feminist, like not do-it-yourself feminist, understanding the true beauty of feminism and Orthodoxy, the real feminism. She had no problem with head covering. She understood because she saw it in the scriptures. She always wondered why people didn't head veil. Like, why don't Protestant churches head veil? She always wondered that, so she was okay with that. That was another thing she was like, I'm on with that, I can do with that. She was always traditional in her own ways. So that's kind of where she's in a great place right now. She's thriving in the faith. She's building her ethos, like I said. But at that time, when it was time to make the decision, she goes, this needs to happen. So.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can continue like what happened with the elders. If that was like the original.
Yeah. Let's dive into that. So what horrors awaited you with the elders?
Yeah. So that week, I had a whole week to kind of prepare for the elders meeting because they meet once a month. And that's when I knew I should do it. I should do it when everyone's present. I should do it truthfully and honestly. So I waited about a week to tell them. So during this time in my office, I'm preparing a letter to say my goodbyes, tell them what's happening in my life, and preparing for the worst. I'm praying, and spiritual warfare was at the highest. There was attacks left and right. We'll even go into some of them. Exactly, how I told you, like weighing the discernment between is God speaking to me? Or am I going to rely on everything that I just learned and understood and knowing that I would be tormented if I didn't? Is God speaking to me, though? Is God telling me to stay? Am I being deceived, right? So this warfare is going back and forth. And Satan sent physical warfare. Man, there was this, in the middle of the week, I kid you not, there was a pastor that was local in the area, and he knew me and I knew him, and we were good buds, and he came in my office, and he knew something was off. He knew something was off, and of course I'm trying to hide it. I'm like, he doesn't know what's about to happen.
You're there crying and shaking the corner, just like, oh, I'm fine, don't worry about me.
Yes. And at the time, I've always been into icons. Like, I never had a problem with icons. So I had Orthodox icons on my wall in my office this whole time. So he comes in, and again, like you said, like previously that morning, I was crying. I was crying, figuring out what I need to do. And he comes in, and he starts talking to me. And after he was talking to me, he paused for a moment, and this was so irrelevant to the conversation, which was the super odd part. He looks at me, and he says, "You're always one decision away from ruining your whole life." That had nothing to do with the conversation. And he walked out the door. No one knew what I was doing. No one knew about the whole thing I was going through. Satan did. And I truly believe that was from Satan. He came into my office to tell me that. You're one decision away from ruining your whole life. Fear just filled my heart. And my face got beat red, and I bawled. I'm like, God, was that from you? Was that from you? Is that you or your voice, or is that Satan? Who am I listening to? The week goes on, and 2 more attacks happened. I told God, I'm like, God, if I'm going the wrong direction, if I'm not supposed to tell my elders I'm leaving, send me a prophet. I said, send me a prophet. I get a text 2 minutes later from an old charismatic pastor that I was best friends with. Out of nowhere, he asked how I was doing, and he proclaims himself as a prophet. And he hasn't reached out to me in months. In months. Sends that text, and I'm praying out loud. So I can imagine Satan is hearing these prayers. 2 minutes later, sends a prophet, quote unquote, because he proclaimed to be a prophet. He just asked how I was doing and stuff, and I didn't want to answer him because I'm like, whoa, like this is so weird. This is super weird. Something spiritually is happening, and I'm being tormented. And in one of my videos, I think I explained that when I was in this decision of going to the elders and telling them, and I was during that week, I felt like, and it sounds heretical, I don't want this to sound heretical, but I felt like Jesus when he was in the garden and he was praying, is there any other way? Does this have to happen? Is there any other way? Sweating blood. And of course, nothing can compare to that. I'm not comparing it to that, but I'm saying I felt that in a sense of I had a decision to make, and I had to make the jump. I know it's the right choice, but again, Satan was tormenting me spiritually, saying, you need to stay. The last attack I had was that Sunday, because the meeting was going to be that Monday or after that. So that Sunday, I was going to go to coffee hour at the Orthodox Church after I got done teaching. So after I got done teaching, I wanted to sprint to my car. I was going to go sprint to my car, grab my wife, because I didn't want to talk to anyone. I knew what was happening the next day. I wanted to avoid everyone. And I went straight, as I'm sprinting to my car to get in there to go to coffee hour because I couldn't go to liturgy. This old lady's like, hey, come back. And I'm like, oh. Turn around, and I walk, put on my fake smile, and, hi, how you doing, blah, blah. And she goes, I just want you to know, God told me to tell you, you are where you are. I can't talk today. She said, you are right where you need to be. You are right where you need to be. And talk about torment. I was terrified. I'm like,
is this God trying to reach me, to tell me to stay? But I knew deep down, everything I learned, I knew I could not stay. So do I rely on a charismatic experience for my whole life? Do I rely on those experiences to make a decision to tell me where to go? Or do I rely on logic, ancient faith, and something that's never changed for 2,000 years? I had a decision to make. So that's when I made my fastest drive to coffee hour, and I just needed to be around Orthodox people. I needed to be around Orthodox people. I could not be around any Protestant people at the time. And of course, I'll never have confirmation that that wasn't God speaking. I don't think anyone will have a certain voice come down from them and say, Jarren, stay where you're at. I don't think that was God. I believe it was Satan trying to pull me and keep me where I was at.
Or
yeah,
just playing devil's advocate.
Yes.
Maybe it was God saying to you, by saying you're right where you need to be, is you're on the right path. Keep going. Keep, as hard as this is, as hard as spiritual focus, as much as you're turmoiled in this space of preparing for this meeting, and how God's seeing your anguish and seeing your hurt, is sending you sort of like a message and saying you're right where you need to be. Keep going. You're almost there. There's sort of like an encouragement. Obviously, it can be misinterpreted. It could be Satan. It very well could be. But there is obviously that possibility, if you view it from that angle, of maybe it was God saying, I'm with you. I'm not leaving you. You're on the right path to join my church. I've given you everything that you need. You're committed to making the decision. You're right where you need to be. This is the journey that I've got for you. This is the plan I have for you.
Right. I never thought of it in that lens. I think during a time when you're in such a distraught state in the mind, that even if what God was speaking to you, you wouldn't hear him because you're so busy in your head, right? So, like you said, that definitely could have been it. That could have been maybe saying, you're on the right journey. You're on the right path. At that time, I took it as, this is Satan trying to pull me at this church, saying I don't need to go anywhere, and I took that and I ran with that. I didn't want to rely on a charismatic experience to have truth, because if we did that, Joseph Smith would be right about Mormonism. Exactly. There's no way to attest what's truth. They're all experience.
Right. I mean, with me, with the way I've heard God before, I've only heard him twice, and it's always been within my heart. I've sort of, as Protestanty as it sounds, right? I've heard words in my heart, like they haven't come from my head. I've felt them here.
Yeah.
And the first one was to sign up to what's called an Alpha course, which is a course that's designed by the Church of England to bring people into Christianity. But growing up in the church, I knew very well what it was. I knew exactly what it was designed to do, and so I was, but I still, there was a voice in my heart saying, you should sign up. What's the worst that could happen? Sort of like God saying, "Come on, you think you're a match for me?"
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit. Can you ask that last question? Sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, basically God was saying, you really think you're a match for me? Come on, give it a shot. Come on, let's see what you're made of. Let's bring your atheism towards me. Let's see who wins.
Right.
And and then the fire gets in me, and I search after God. And then the second time I hear God's voice it's June of 2024, and I'm visiting my parents, and they live up in the north of England. I live around Birmingham, and I went there, and I forgive the details. I was I just finished going to the toilet. I had pulled everything up that needed to be pulled up, and buckled my belt and things like that. I was just about to go wash my hands.
Right.
And I was walking from the toilet to the sink, and again, that voice in my heart that I knew was God's in hindsight was telling me to sign up to the Alpha course to lead me to God. That same voice was saying, look into the apostolic faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I got. That's it. You know, and so I do firmly believe that God, you know, allows these things to happen to set us on the right path, to put us, you know, in the right direction, to have us hear what we need to hear. But, you know, even throughout my inquiry into Christianity, and also my inquiry into Orthodoxy, anything, you know, I'd read books, watch YouTube videos, you know, watch documentaries, listen to podcasts, etc. And every single time I'd have a question, there'd be something that was recommended that was an answer to my question every single time. Especially the first time, it was for a solid month of just, you know, if I was clicking on a YouTube video, the first recommended option was an answer to my question every single time for a month. And if you understand how YouTube algorithms work and things like that, that's just not possible. Yeah, it's possible for a short time, but not for a long time, because eventually YouTube starts to want to serve, you know, Mr. Beast, or, you know, I don't know, Linus Tech Tips, or, you know, whatever, because it wants to feed the algorithm of what will make the money.
Yes.
But every single time for a solid month, it was what I needed to hear. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly been my experience with hearing God. But
wow.
Yeah, carry on.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because in Orthodoxy, you obviously do see God speaking to his saints, God speaking to his people through visions, and through, you know, even the Theotokos coming in, saints visiting people. It's definitely not to say it's not Orthodox to, you can't say it's not Orthodox to hear God's voice. You know, I think the difference is we have a system where we can test if it is God's voice. We have a system where we can look at the history, we can look at the church fathers, we can look to our spiritual father. We can have all these sources to confirm. Sorry, they're working on the house out there. It's a little loud. To confirm that you did hear God's voice. And without the church, you don't have that. You're never able to tell what's from God and what's not. So, you know, it's definitely that we can't say that God doesn't speak to us, and, you know, that the Holy Spirit doesn't give us those whispers, because that's just not who God is. God wants to communicate with us, and, you know, we just have to be in tune with him. We have to understand, and like you said, you had an openness of truth. Earlier you said you were open to truth. Like, you're like, what is truth? Asking that. Yeah. Asking that puts you at a humble state of, I don't know it all. God, I need you. What is truth? Yeah. And obviously
that's the place you have to come from as well. You have to come from humility. Every single time. If you're coming in arrogance, if you're coming with like a pompous sense of like, oh, I'm a big fancy pastor, I'm a big know-it-all, you know, God is not going to meet you.
Oh no, absolutely.
He's literally going to see you. He's going to be like, I'm not going to waste my time.
Yeah.
Well, why should I bother? Because you're not willing to be molded by me.
That's the only way you're going to become Orthodox. That's the only way you'll become Orthodox, is if you humble yourself, erase everything that you've learned, and you listen to what the church has taught. And you humbly accept that you're a 21st century peasant. You don't know anything. You were not there fighting the Arian crisis. You were not there fighting Rome. You were not there keeping Christianity alive in the first 1,000 years. And I'm going to take that, and I'm going to humble myself, saying, there's truth. I mean, Christ promised to guide his church always, and I have to be open to it. So I remember there was a moment when I was the minister. I was in my yard and I was praying and I was writing in my journal, And I literally wrote, I still have the paper. I said, God, I am willing to go wherever truth is. Wherever your church is, I will go. I don't care what that looks like. I just want your truth, and I'm willing to lose anything for your truth. So having that mindset, I think that's when God was able to pry my heart to open to the apostolic faith, because there was an unhardening done that I had where I needed to shut up my thoughts about the Theotokos. I needed to shut up my thoughts about infant baptism. I just needed to shut up, and I needed to listen and learn.
Yeah. Amen. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the meeting.
Oh, yeah.
What happened? Leaving us on tender hooks, mate.
There's so much to the story. So,
I know we've been 2 hours on a testimony. It's a record for the channel. It's all good. Don't worry, bro. Carry on.
This is gonna be a long live, you know. This is good though. This is good.
It's all good.
I
We're here
have
for it.
time. Yeah. So, and now it's time for the meeting. And of course, like I said, I had a letter prepared for what I was going to say, and I knew that it was the day. This is the day that had to happen. I spent all day in my office praying. I texted my priest to pray for me. I texted my Orthodox friends to pray for me. My priest went to the temple, lit some candles, and he goes, God is with you. You have this. You know, you got this. So I went in, and pretty much how the meetings run. You know, you start with like a little bit of prayer, and then we start with the updates, everything that's been going on in the ministry. You know, we have like 8 different ministries in that church, and you know, youth ministry was mine. So it was my time to give my report. And at this point, every meeting I have a packet like this thick about what I'm doing with the youth, what's going on, what I plan on, what I'm requesting of the elders. And they see that I have no papers, but a little crumpled up letter that I had folded. Sorry, excuse me, I'm having heartburn. So the meeting was kind of thrown off a little bit, and they're like, well, this is weird, he doesn't have his stuff, and he's a little quiet. I came there, and I was like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to fake it. I don't want to fake anything. So it was finally my turn to talk, and the tears just bawling, right? And I couldn't get my words out at first. I didn't know how to tell them, and I crumpled up the paper and I told them, I'm just like, to sum it up, I would just say, hey, my wife and I, we love this church. We love everyone. We love everything about it. You all are amazing, and this is the hardest decision I have to make. This is not something I want to do. This is something I need to do. And I told them we were converting to Eastern Orthodoxy. And I originally said, I'm not willing to argue. I'm not willing to argue doctrine right now. This is not a time to do it. If you want to talk to me about it after, and you can understand my reasonings, I'd be glad to. So it was complete silence. Silence around the table. There's like, the deacons were there too. So it was about 15 guys, 15 elders. Maybe one guy raised their hand and asked a question. They said, was this in your head before you took the job here? And I said, of course not. I bought a house out here. Like, I would not move out here just to do this to you guys, right? Silence the rest of the time. They moved on to the next subject. They're like, all right, well, down to our monthly blah, blah, blah budget. They're talking about the budget, and I'm just like, is that it? I'm sitting there in silence this whole meeting. And I finally get dismissed at the end of the meeting. And there was only one elder who came up to me and thanked me for everything. One elder who said he loved me and he wishes the best for me. At the time, the lead pastor wasn't there. He had a funeral to attend, so he didn't get to hear any of this. And him and I built a good relationship, so this sucked that he wasn't there. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to tell him face to face. I go into the office the next day to start packing up and getting my stuff ready, and you know, it was not a good conversation. I went to go talk to him, and He accused me of planning this, that I had this all planned out, and he's going to watch me heavily this next couple of weeks, or going to be heavily monitored on you and the kids while you pack up and tell the kids goodbye. And, that this is all fishy. You know, he's concerned for my salvation, concerned from leading my wife down the wrong path. And it was bad. And he says, why didn't you talk to me about this? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I tried. You weren't interested. And I kept it civil, but he was not. It was a very immature conversation. And I stood up, shook his hand, and I said, thank you for everything. And I got up and I packed, and they had me out. And within that week, I got to say goodbye to the kids, but I didn't get to explain really too much. So I had to go, and and from there on, that's when the fire even grew further, because a bunch of lies were made up about me, and how, I was a wolf in sheep's clothing and all this stuff. And the church just shut me out. No one reached out. No one, nothing. It was just, I was a dirt heretic to them. And on this topic, I lost a lot of family that's not my family. I don't want to speak any ill upon my in-laws. I love them to death, but it did not go well with them. So I lost a lot of people, and I had to lose my job, lost some friends. This decision, like you said, it cost me. And of course, it's not the worst suffering in the world. Of course, I'm not being persecuted and, just getting my head chopped off for being a Christian over here. Of course, we have it pretty good over here in America. But the persecution from the mental game of losing people and people thinking you're a heretic and all that stuff, it's pretty tough.
It is persecution. Whatever way you slice it, it's persecution. Because you're being punished for your beliefs. That's the literal definition of what persecution is. There's a story I want to tell, and I haven't told you this. I haven't told this story on the channel before. People will understand why it's relevant, especially after hearing you say that. So I was involved with a Christian ministry called Creation Research. This is in 2021. I started with them, I think. And it's 6-day fundamentalist Christian, evolution bad, Big Bang bad, God creation good ministry, right? And I started with them, and I came on to do sort of social media, YouTube, and advisement with them to sort of help pick up their channel, and and I increased their subscribers. I had ideas for launched a live streaming service because of an idea that I had, and did like regular live streams on a Friday called Creation Conversations. And I started with that, and obviously I started on this journey towards Eastern Orthodoxy, and obviously I was sat here doing recording, that kind of thing, and you can notice in the background of my video, at some point an icon corner goes up, very subtle in the background, very small, very minuscule. It starts to grow over time, and no one says anything. I don't talk to them about this because this is a personal journey for me. It's something that I'm wrestling with myself. And then we have a live stream one time, and someone comments in the comment section, "Oh, Sam, nice icons in the background," in all caps, basically like to try and bring attention to it. And this is in 2025, right? This is last year. And so all throughout this time, so there's a gentleman who used to run the ministry, a wonderful very God-seeking man, very kind-hearted, named John Mackay. And I looked up to him, and I want to preface this by saying I don't wish any ill will on anyone in that organization. They're all wonderful people. They're very kind. They're very generous, and they're not filled with hate. But my experience in converting is sort of very similar to yours in that it's that very knee-jerk reaction, that very sort of like hostile sort of like saying, and after the live stream, the comment was noticed, and the person in the UK who runs it, a guy named Joe Hubbard, and John Mackay, they have a private conversation because they're in conversation all the time because they've got because John Mackay's in Australia, Joe's in the UK, and they've got someone in the US and things like that. Okay. And they have a conversation. Now I receive a text at 5:26 in the morning, obviously Australia time, that kind of stuff. And I'll read it out to you because this I was both very angry, but also very upset and hurt by this. It says, Sam, Joe, RE icons. Joe and I had discussion after this latest creation conversations, so talk to Joe when he gets home next week. Icons drove a wedge between Christians ages ago, and we can't let it happen here. So no icons in future, as many, myself included, regard them as fake faith props that substitute ceremony for substance, no different than the adoration of saint statues, all of which were rightly kicked out at the Reformation. John. That broke my heart because I had just done the year. It was the year before. I'd done that paper on iconography. I presented it to people. I'd lost friends, and it was happening again. And I was caught in a rock and a hard place, and I couldn't. I had two choices. I could either, take the icons down in submission and say, "Oh, sorry, my bad." But then in the back of my mind, I was just like, why should I? This is my journey. I can prove icons from scripture alone, and church history. Why should I have to change? Why should I have to do this? Why should I have to give up this journey that I'm on just to satisfy an image? And I had a conversation with Joe, and I came up with a compromise. I said, look, Joe, I'm going through this journey at the moment. I'm committed to joining the Eastern Orthodox Church. I'm a catechumen. I'm very far along down the process. This has been going on for a while. I haven't told you guys because it doesn't concern the ministry. All we deal with is creation. Genesis, evolution, Big Bang, fossils. That's all we deal with. And he said, okay. And Joe was very supportive and said, okay, well, let's think about how we can go forward. And I said, look, I will tilt my camera. I'll put it at an angle so you can't see any of the icons. You can see me. And I changed angles. I went from like a side-on angle to a front-on angle and then back to side-on. So it's like I was going back to my original sort of camera angle. And that was fine. And then that went on for a week, maybe two. And then all of a sudden, because we'd have weekly Zoom meetings, and I was in the. I went because you had to be let into the meeting. I went to log on. I wasn't let into the meeting, and I remember texting and getting no reply, And then all of a sudden, creation conversations stopped happening. The live stream stopped happening. And then basically there was the decision that I can't carry on with the ministry in a public facing way, because ultimately it conflicts with the Protestant beliefs of the organization. They can't have that as the public face. And I said, I don't understand. What has this got to do with Protestantism? Like, it's to do with creation in Genesis. Reading Saint Seraphim Rose's book, Genesis, Creation, the Origin, an Early Man, very much against evolution of millions of years, and even cites multiple Protestant resources within the book. And still, it was still a firm no. And eventually I was just forgotten about. I went off into the background, and it hurt. It hurt so much, because these were people who had helped shape me as a person, who I'd grown up with, who I had looked up to and adored and for guidance and help and support over the years. And I just started to get a little bit of money from them to be paid for my work, and that gone down the toilet. So when we say that when you convert to Orthodoxy, it's one of the, I say this, it's one of the best decisions of your entire life, but it's also the worst decision you can possibly make in your entire life, because you lose everything.
Yeah.
Your whole life, in most cases, crumbles around you. You lose friends, family members, jobs, sometimes homes, cars, income streams, etc. And you have to start again. You have to build up from scratch. And it is so tough. But I want to say that I wish no ill will on that organization. If anyone goes over and starts leaving comments saying, oh, why'd you let Sam go for being Orthodox? You are not welcome on this channel. Do not do that in any situation. Do not blame them. Leave them alone. They're wonderful people who are doing a good thing, and they are, in my view, are firm in their beliefs, and I respect that, and I understand now why it had to happen, but at the time it still hurt. Yeah. Just the way everything happened was so just abrasive and knee-jerk, and without talking to me and understanding my point of view, where I was coming from, how I viewed them, how, all that kind of stuff.
I think that's exactly my attitude towards the church, the Church of Christ I was attending, because it's not their fault. It is not their fault that I converted. It is not their problem. This was strictly out of a leap of faith for me. They hired me thinking I was going to be there for a long time and that I would do my duty there. I see why they were upset. I'm not. I understand why you're upset. And if I was in your shoes and I believed that the Church of Christ was the one true church, I would be upset. If that's what I truly believed, if I was in their shoes. So like you said, no ill will, no nothing. I do believe that they do love the Lord. I do believe they're misguided in their beliefs, but they're genuine people. And even though I believe they handled it wrongly, they're people I love, and they're not ill-willed people. Like they genuinely are trying to do the right thing in their eyes, and from what they know, from what they see in the scriptures. And I think that's an attitude that Saint Seraphim Rose has towards Protestants too. I can't find his exact quote, but he says there's no reason we can't be nice and relatable to Protestants, and we can't just be. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. We have to treat them with love, because this might be the only Orthodox they experience. That might be the only encounter with an Orthodox person they ever have. You never know. And they just haven't experienced the fullness. They have not seen the fullness. They have a part truth of Christ, and we just cannot treat them with any contempt. We have to love them, and they are God's people still. He loves them, and we need to love them. So I truly respect the attitude that you have towards that ministry specifically.
Yeah. So take me back to after, the meeting. What happened when you got home and you spoke to your wife?
So yeah, she obviously knew I was doing it that day. We honestly, I was so out of it. I was distraught. I was sad. I was happy. I was sad. I was happy because I now could pursue Orthodoxy full time. This is going to be my life now, and I know I've made it home. But I'm so sad because of what I built here, and I moved here, and the kids are heartbroken. I'm sad, It was a really rough moment for me. That's when I really understood that night that Orthodoxy cost me everything. And to be honest, that night we just went out and got some drinks, and we ate in silence. She knew that I needed the silence, and I just needed to think. I needed to understand what I just didn't comprehend. And we were going on a marriage retreat that weekend, so it all lined up kind of perfectly. So we were able to go on our marriage retreat and kind of regroup there with everything that happened. So yeah, that's kind of what happened after that. But that next week, we were at Divine Liturgy, and I was happy. I was just so content to be at liturgy, and that was actually my first liturgy. Was when I finally quit, and so I'm like, I'm home. I'm finally home, and everything made sense. There were still a lot of complications that I had to get over. Okay, well, we moved all the way out here. We bought a house out here. We're in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing out here but that church. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's no reason for us to be out here. So we had an hour drive to church all the time, liturgy, and we wanted to be involved in the church life a lot. So that was kind of hard, just being so far, because that was the closest church to us. There's no Orthodoxy. And that's the thing. In the UK, I'm sure it's a lot more present in the UK with Orthodoxy. But in America here, I'm sure, with the people that you've interviewed, Orthodoxy is growing. It's, glory be to God, it's growing. But the Orthodoxy in America is so unknown. It is so foreign to people. So after this, it was just learning to be Orthodox in an anti-Orthodox country, it's super odd, and we can go into that if you would like.
I mean, in the UK, there are Orthodox churches. We have, there are churches around, but unless you're in a city, you're unlikely to experience Orthodoxy. It's a lot better now. It didn't used to be the fact. More urban communities, like more sort of towns, are starting to, have an Orthodox church that's somewhat near them. It's slowly growing. In that sense, I mean, obviously these big churches are huge. I mean, my congregation, my parish I go to, I mean, on a Sunday, it's bursting at the seams. There's, by the end of it, there's hardly any standing room. And we've got to do, the Eucharist and things like that. You've got to get all those people in, and still more people. I mean, I had an inquirer on Saturday coming to the church who I was asked to help out with. Glory be to God, to explain. It was their first, liturgy. And I was asked to explain, what's the priest doing here? What are icons for? Why do we use incense? All those sort of the basic stuff. And, glory be to God, they went away, and, I gave them some books and prayer open, a prayer book that I had laying around, and they're on their own journey, and I pray that they will return. But, I hear the phrase, orthodoxy is unknown in America, and to a point I understand that, especially if you're in like Utah or Nevada, or that it's sort of like more sort of like centralized America, more desert sort of like region, mountainous, what have you. You only really find orthodoxy in the States in sort of like just the cities, which I find surprising. I thought there would be more like monasteries sort of set up in these sort of rural places and things that could serve liturgy.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I should be careful when I say there's not much orthodoxy in America. Like there definitely is, and there's a lot of beautiful monasteries, especially with all the saints of America. St. Herman, Alaska, it was a huge reason for orthodoxy in America, and same with St. Tikhon and his monasteries. Of course, there it's present. But like you said, you have to be in certain parts. But I guess if you ask an average American, if you did a survey and you asked 50 Americans about, do you know what Eastern Orthodoxy is? It's going to be like 15% who might. And if they do, it's because they know what Greek Orthodoxy is. Like they see it in movies, like, My Big Greek Fat Wedding. Like they see Orthodoxy in this tinted view of like, oh, it's just you're Greek. If you're Orthodox, you're Greek. That's what it's viewed as here.
Yeah.
You go to any shop, any Walmart, any gift shop, there's always Catholic portraits or there's Protestant books. Catholic books, Protestant books, blah blah blah. Orthodoxy is just not in there. You can never find an icon in any odd store. But you can find other Christian stuff in there, like Billy Graham type stuff and, Catholic stuff. It's just Orthodoxy is foreign living there. I mean, of course, it's definitely a minority in America. It's just heavily dominated by Protestantism.
Which is surprising because Eastern Orthodoxy is the second largest group of Christianity.
When I looked at those numbers, I was shocked because in America, it feels so small. And I'm like, is Orthodoxy really that present in other countries? And I look at it, yes, it is. It is the second largest. I guess America it's founded on Protestantism. So that's why it feels so distant. It doesn't feel home here. I talk with my buddies after coffee hour and I'm like, this is the only day of the week where I feel some sort of sanity. When I can come here and I can think like people and I can think the exact same way as other people. I can't have that during my week. And it's like a miracle if I run into someone who knows about Orthodoxy. It's a miracle. That's what I've experienced. Now, you might get Americans who say otherwise. Where I'm from and from what I've experienced, it's foreign to people.
Yeah. So, so you join into the church. You start your catechumen process. What was the catechumen process like for you? Coming out of that?
I was so excited to get started. Of course, I heard that some catechumens, the process takes 3 years, 4 years, a year. I didn't know what my priest was really going to do. All I knew that I was excited, but I was okay to wait. I was okay to learn and soak in the faith and soak it in and learn what it means to be Orthodox and understand what I'm getting myself into. So at the time, my buddy and I became catechumens at the same time. And so we all got catechized on the same day. And it was in October. And that's when, I really started to feel the battle, of, okay, this is hard. Like I'm trying to start the fast. The first fast was the nativity fast that we had tried. It's hard. It was tough. I've never had a prayer rule. Father gave us a prayer rule. Submitting myself to a prayer routine that someone else gave me was a relief to me in a lot of ways because, like, I remember you and I talked about how we both needed structure. And having that structure in my life of you pray at this time, you say this prayer, you say this prayer, this time you say this prayer. And some Protestants may look at that and they're like, why would you ever want that? Why would you ever want someone to tell you when to pray and how to pray, and that you can't use your own words? And it's not that we can't use our own words as Orthodox. It's just that when we say the prayers of the church, they become the prayer of our heart. And I start praying those words out of my heart, and that's what I feel. So,
but also as well, it's from a place of coming from ecclesial anxiety and coming from a place of worried about what you're believing in is true and things like that. Those written down prayers that we have in our prayer books, they're the safety net, because they have been developed and tried and tested and debated for centuries within the Orthodox Church, and we know that they're theologically sound, so we can rest easy in those prayers, because when you're Protestant, you can make up anything.
Yes.
And and it's completely up to you how you pray and what you say, and you could end up saying something really heretical and stupid, but no one will correct you, because you were all, especially if you're non-denominational, you're Protestant, and you pray what you think the Bible says, and you follow the Jesus man, and it's all cool and fine and dandy, and having those prayers is it's a relief.
Yes.
People like us who have come from a Protestant background, who have struggled and wrestled with, what is truth? Where's the true faith? Where's the denomination? Why have I been believing lies for so long? Why, this, that, and the other. And for us, it's just like, we can just go, we can just breathe a sigh of relief and just say, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
We can just submit.
That's exactly what I was looking for. And I even said it earlier in my Protestant walk. I was looking to submit to something. I was looking for something that I could rest in, and that I could rest assured that I'm submitting myself to a system that I don't have to go down rabbit holes anymore. So like you said, when your spiritual father gives you a prayer rule, no ifs, ands, or buts, you do the prayer rule. You do the prayer rule the best you can. You do it as consistent as you can. And if you have questions, you go to him. And I think the nature of submission is, a lot of people don't like that word nowadays. Of course, men might not like that word. Men sometimes don't like to say, I don't need to submit to anyone. I'm the man, people submit to me. But I think in Orthodoxy, once you've been humbled, like we talked about, there's almost a desire to listen and learn and submit. And the relief, like you said, it's like a shoulder drop. It's like, wow, I don't have to sit here for 15 minutes in my quiet time with God and think of what to say. Like, oh God, did I already pray about that? Did I already pray about this? No, my mind is consistently non-seasoned praying. Either I'm saying the Jesus prayer, or it's reading the prayers in our prayer books. It's never a pause where I'm just thinking, what should I say next to him? And then rabbit holes of thoughts come flying in. It's so much better to pray when you have structure. And Jews, and like we talked about earlier, Jewish people have always prayed like this. They've always prayed the Psalms. They've always prayed together in a liturgical way. This was how it was done. There wasn't like, I need to go get my coffee and alone time with God and speak to him. Maybe there's something close to that, but it was liturgical and you were structured. It's the Jewish roots of our religion. It's the Jewish roots of what Jesus would have done. Jesus had structured prayers, and that's hard to believe for some people.
Yeah, 100%. And you see people like Pastor Stephen Anderson with his mockery of the Jesus prayer, and treating us like some autistic Rain Man, shaking in a corner and chanting incessantly. You see that, and you wonder like how wrong you are, because you don't understand. You haven't experienced it. You're just seeing it from your lens, and you're seeing something that seems foreign to you, and you're saying, "Oh, that's demonic." Like, no, it's ancient. It's liturgical. It's been tried and tested for thousands of years. I mean, again, when we're reading our Bible, right? When we're doing our daily scripture reading, when we read something, we're just like, I don't quite understand that. We have the freedom to say, what did the church fathers say about this verse? Okay, cool. Thank you. I understand now. Whereas, but this is the thing, within Protestantism, you have Calvinist study Bibles, you have free grace study Bibles, you have different commentaries written by different denominations having different interpretations and different things, and you read one thing in one and one thing in another and one thing. No wonder you've got ecclesial anxiety, because you don't know where to turn. You've got no objective sense of this is the pillar and bulwark of all truth. This is what the scriptures say, because we have debated this for thousands of years. We have gone to councils about this. We've counted heretics with these verses. This is how we interpret the scriptures, because we have been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. That's something that we can have a sigh of relief on, and we can say, I'm going to trust the church, and I'm going to trust in Christ when he says, I will send the Holy Spirit and will lead you into all truth, and he won't abandon you. Christ isn't a liar. So when he said that, he meant it. And so what does that look like? It looks like the Orthodox Church. So then we trust in what the Holy Spirit has led the church to, and where we come to in humility, and we say, okay, this is where we are now. This is what this verse means, because this is what the church has said for so long on this verse. This is exactly what it means. It doesn't mean what these other people are interpreting it as. It means this. And so we're just like, cool, awesome, thank you very much, I'll go about with my day, instead of spending 3 weeks doing a YouTube rabbit hole of trying to discern between different debaters and different denominations on which a person has the right interpretation of the verse.
Yeah, that's exactly the point of the church. Some Protestants have accused me of being sola ecclesia, church alone versus scripture alone, and to an extent, I agree that in a sense I'm sola ecclesia. I do believe that the church is the pillar and ground of truth, and the scripture is a part of the church. So you can't separate the church from the scriptures. They're both infallibly guarded, and they're both preserved truth. I think Protestants have a misconception about either church versus scripture. It's not verses, it's together. And without any infallible interpretation of the scripture, you're free to believe what you have to believe. I mean, proof of the Protestant doctrine of private judgment. You're free to believe whatever you want, and then they might say, no, you're not. Well, in reality, there's no binding of conscience. There's no binding of conscience in Protestantism, and that's something that I craved, was a binding of conscience where I could read the scriptures, just like you said, and come to a conclusion where I'm like, what the heck did that mean? That doesn't make sense. This sounds like Arianism. I can submit myself to the church now and say, I don't know better. The church knows better. I'm a 21st century peasant. I don't know anything. I'm submitting myself to the church who gave us the scriptures. You don't have them as a Protestant. And so, yes, I'm sola ecclesia in a way of, yes, the church is my guide, is my light. They are the pillar and ground of truth. Because I was talking with my Catholic friend about this, and him and I had interesting conversations, because obviously we can agree on a lot, especially about the systems of how infallibility works, about how the church is guided. We'll have interesting conversations. Something that we agreed upon was, if a random person who's never heard about Christianity picks up the Bible, they read the scriptures for the first time, they read the New Testament, they can, for sure, come out with an Arian interpretation of the scriptures. I think if you read the scriptures alone, because of our sinfulness and our misunderstanding, you absolutely can see Arianism in the scriptures. That's what it was about. the Arians pulled it from Scripture. They weren't just saying it just because they were thinking that. No, they looked into the Scriptures and they genuinely thought that's what the Scriptures taught. So what makes any Christian in the 21st century not capable of doing that? We're all capable of doing that. So what does this call for? We need an infallible source to interpret it for us. And I know Protestants hate that. I hated it first too. But without that, there's no ultimate truth. Everything is up for grabs. Everything is not set in stone. You would have the right to be an Arian if the church wasn't there. So I know it's a bold statement, but I truly believe with the church is the infallible guide with the church along with the Scriptures.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, and you were received recently, weren't you?
Yeah, so I was received on Lazarus Saturday. Yep. So about, I don't know how many months ago that was. It was in April, I believe. Yeah, April. Yeah.
Are you were received with your wife alongside you, or was she joined separately?
Yes. So we had 13 of us all baptized. Wow. It was beautiful. The church was filled. It was the best day of my life. It was that baptism. It was, and I've been baptized 3 times, so that was the best one.
Yeah, good.
But yes.
Well, I mean, we finally made it to Orthodoxy after goodness knows how long.
2 hours and 40 minutes.
Beards and mustaches have grown substantially in that time. Let's talk about your music.
Yes.
Because you're a very talented singer-songwriter. And I've been, I just came across a video of yours on TikTok or something like that. And then I always like to, be a bit nosy with Orthodox creators, and look
I
at
love
this.
it.
And I found the song that you wrote, received his blood. How did you get into singing and songwriting?
Yes, finally on that topic after all that, what this was about. Originally, I've always been into music. I've always been in singing. I was in chorus. I was in plays. I played a few musical instruments growing up. And then when I was 17, I got my first guitar. And I really started to fall in love with the guitar. And started singing and songwriting, writing my own music. So I've always had a passion for it. And the odd part about it was my name Jarren in Hebrew means he will sing. And it actually came to my mom in a dream. And I believe how it went was an angel told her in the dream to name me Jarren. And she's never heard of that name. And so Jarren means he will sing. And of course, she told me that when I was maybe like 12, and I found out about them. Like, oh, no way, I love singing, blah, blah, blah. But I never took it seriously, I was like, yeah, whatever. It's probably just a coincidence. And I seriously fell in love with music and started writing songs when I was 16. But I wasn't serious about it. I was just doing it just to, have fun. And there was no seriousness towards it. But then it really sparked when my wife, when she met me, I was really starting to get into guitar again. I picked it back up and I was trying to learn a little bit more in my singing. And she told me, she's like, I've always prayed that my husband would love singing and love guitar. And so I was like, wow, interesting, right? So I really started to dive into that a little more. And I actually wrote my first song that I showed everyone, which was our wedding song. And I wrote a song for her for her wedding, and I performed it for her there. And that kind of sparked it from there. And she told me, she goes, you need to never stop playing. You need to keep doing this. You need to do all this. So basically,
keep doing romantical things.
Yeah, that's her love language. So that's kind of what I stuck with. And of course, I was always on and off, coming back. But about 4 months ago, I was like, okay, why not produce a few songs? Why not see where it goes and dabble in it? Because this is a passion of mine. And what if I made it full time one day? What if I was able to do that? So I started picking up the pencil and notebook again and getting my guitar at work. And I have so much free time at work. so much free time that I'm able to play guitar there while I wait for customers. So I start writing songs in between customers and really starting to get down. And my first song was called Satan's Always Told Me. I wasn't planning on going with an Orthodox theme yet. I think it was just me getting my thoughts and words out on paper about some battles that I've had. So it wasn't like Orthodox sounding. And I wrote that one. And that one went very well, and I got it produced. And I still love that song. But the second song, as I was writing here, so we're getting into Receive His Blood, I really started thinking, I rarely ever hear any Orthodox modern music. There's a few bands that have like, they have rock band to like Psalm 135, and but like any Protestant can claim that kind of music, So like there's some Orthodox musicians who have that music, but I'm like, what if I created a niche where I can write modern music, but Orthodox theme, where no other Protestant could sing this song, in a way, Not that they can't sing it. Like they might agree with a lot of it. Obviously, there's a lot of truths that we agree on, but I guess my saying like, what if I can write something that like specifically Orthodox people can relate to deeply? Because some people aren't into chants. Some people who convert, they might like it a little bit, but they don't like listening to it in the gym. They don't like listening to it while doing homework, whatever it is. If they like modern music and there's nothing sinful about it, why can't I incorporate Orthodox themes? So I was like, okay, one day at work, I was like, I'm gonna go through this. So I wrote a song about the Eucharist. So that's what Receive His Blood is about. It's about repentance, getting back up, acknowledging the truth of the Eucharist, and receiving His blood, and having endurance, and keep going. And that's going to transition into another song that you and I talked about.
Yeah. We'll come on to that in a second. I wanted to ask you, well, actually, two questions. The first one is, how long typically does it take to sort of go from like that might be an idea for a song, to like getting the song fully produced and finished? Like what does that process look like? And the second sort of part to that is, what do you think makes a song inherently Orthodox?
Those are great questions. I would say for the first question, for me, I've always been a quick songwriter. I've always been able to isolate my brain and self from every other thing, and I can write a song in like 2 hours. I can get it down, get the melody down, get everything. Once I get on a flow, I'm going. So typically to write the song, it's literally in a span of like an hour or so. 2 hours to completely get the full thing finished. Now producing, that's where it gets hard, because I obviously have to work with my producer's schedule. He's a busy man. So he's great, but we typically would meet one day and I give him that song idea, what I want in the song, and we do a little kind of run through it, and then I meet with him maybe that next Saturday. And Saturday he has a whole thing ready for me with all the other instruments to add in there, and the whole techie music producer thing, which I don't know too much about. But we start going and we start making edits, we record, and by that next couple days, he has it finished for me, and we're ready to produce it. So maybe like 2 weeks would probably be the average time it makes to produce a song for me. And of course, for speaking for other artists, I have no clue. But for me, I believe that it would be a little quicker than some.
Yeah.
Secondly, what makes an Orthodox song Orthodox? There is a saint. I cannot recall the saint. I always mess up because there's so many saints, and I forget which one said it, which one said this, and quoting is hard for me.
They weren't lying when they say great cloud of witnesses.
Yes, it's so real. It's so deep. You never stop learning. Basically, there's this one saint who's saying anything that is true is Christian. Anything that's Christian is true. So I took this approach to my music of, okay, if it's true, it's Orthodox. what is true about Orthodoxy that I have in my feelings that I can put into music. So it's not the instruments that make it Orthodox. It's not the chanting that makes it Orthodox. It's the theology behind your music. It's the heart behind your music. That's what I truly believe what Orthodox music is. Of course, music has evolved over time. We all can agree. Can we 100% say that we sing exactly like, the first century Jews, like in the exact tones that they sing in? No, we can't confidently say we sing exactly like them. Obviously, music has evolved over time, and more education has happened with music. So for me, I think instruments are not sinful. Obviously, we don't, as Orthodox, have a universal need for instruments. Like the majority of Orthodox churches do not use instruments. It's mainly vocals, but there are a few Western Rite, that have an organ in there just to keep people on key when they're singing. So I definitely don't think it's the sound. It's the heart and the theology. So when I'm writing my music now, especially with the receive his blood, I'm thinking of what are some Orthodox themes about repentance, about receiving his blood as a physician. Like we agree that as Orthodoxy, we don't have a legalistic view of the sacraments where it's like you receive it and you're justified. No, it's a healing. We have a healing sense of sacraments. So Jesus is our physician. The sacraments are our healing medicine. They're the medicine of immortality, as we say. So in my music, I'm like, okay, we have a physician. Christ is our physician, and the Eucharist is our medicine. So I'm like, how can I write a song about that? And of course, I have comments that some people say, like, man, this just sounds Protestant. This isn't really Orthodox. I'm like, okay, well, look at the lyrics. Can any Orthodox say what I just said about the body and blood of Christ? I don't think they can. When I'm talking about the Eucharist, I'm
you mean Protestants?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you mean Protestants. You said Orthodox.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. Yeah. So Protestants, yeah. So it's just I'm talking in an Orthodox sense about repentance in the Eucharist, and not a lot of Protestants agree with that theology. So that's what makes it Orthodox. So.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. I think. Obviously, within Scripture we have examples. For instance, David, sang and danced before the Lord. He wrote the vast majority of the Psalms.
Yeah.
Which are literally just songs. That's what they are. So God isn't against music. God isn't against instruments and things like that. And obviously, within the liturgical sense, we have the chanting.
Yeah.
I suppose it's also as well as a way to keep us humble. As look how well I can play my guitar, or how well I can play the piano, that kind of thing. So, and that's when pride sort of starts to come in, and that serves no place in the church. So if we keep it simple to just chanting, then pride doesn't hold, because ultimately you're trying to sing in unison with people who have different singing styles and different, one might be, baritone, one might be tenor, that kind of thing. You've got the different sort of scale of things that you all have to work in unison, in harmony, to create something beautiful. And so there's no sense of pride there. No one is greater than someone else. It's a unification tool. But I think also as well, you need to there's a famous semi-famous Orthodox band called Unto Ages. Oh, no,
I've heard of them.
No, it's not Unto Ages. It's
Are they a rock band?
Yeah, really. They've done a collaboration with Brian Welch from Korn, who's a Christian. That's going to really annoy me, so I'm going to look it up. It's Brian Welch collab. Who was it? Holy Name. That's it. Holy Name.
Okay, I haven't heard of them. I've thought I've heard of something like on the first one, but tell me more about.
Yeah, well, Holy Name. They're very, very heavy metal, very scream, kind of screamo, that kind of thing. But if you look at their music videos, I mean, they have like it's just images of the Theotokos and Christ and the saints and things like that, and an Orthodox cross and things. It's wonderfully refreshing, and the lyrics are completely Orthodox. They're in theology and thinking and about struggle and all that kind of thing. But the musical style doesn't quite match with what's being said, and so I think that's a problem with us as people, where we are in the world, we are surrounded by people within this world who are, talking about twerking their gyats and all that kind of stuff. It's how many lines of coke can they do off the back of a hooker's nose? That kind of stupid stuff that people sing about and seem to enjoy.
Right.
And they seem to conflate that with, what. Just because something is in that musical style doesn't necessarily make it un-Christian and doesn't make it unorthodox. It's about the substance, what's underneath, where the person is coming from. Are they coming from for instance, some of like Charlie XCX or even Billie Eilish, the lyrics are so beautiful and so filled with pain and trying to heal from it and meaning, and it's so deep and resonant. And yet you have people like Lil Nas X and Big Nasty and all these people with stupid names, with stupid ideas and stupid hats and stupid shoes, all that kind of stuff. And it's the mentality. It's the, in my view anyway, it's the mentality. It's the how you approach it, and from what do you aim to get out of it? Are you just trying to make money, or are you trying to do something that's more than yourself? That is, in essence, I suppose that what we need to do within music, especially Orthodox music, is we need to be able to convey theosis. Because, ultimately, theosis is the lessening of yourself and the growing of Christ within you to fill in the stuff that you've scooped out. That's the aim, is to become like God. And so we talk, how do we do that? We talk about our struggle. We talk about our strife, how we are wrestling with passions, and how we turn to the church, the Eucharist, etc., to get to that place of theosis. And I think that has a big element, for me anyway, as to what can make something Orthodox. But then also as well, on the other side of the spectrum, people may say, oh, why isn't Hillsong music Orthodox? Well, for several reasons. One, their theology is absolutely dog crap. It's made with the wrong intentions. It's not really made to worship and glorify God. It's made to sell albums. It's made to bring money into the church. It's filled with some of the weakest lyrics I've heard, especially even amongst secular music as well. Some of the lyrics is just so watery and repetitive. Or what's that song? Is it Holy, Holy, Holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come?
Oh yeah, Revelation.
And then it just repeats over and over again. And there's a song of Yeshua, and it goes over and over again. And they attack us for vain repetitions. You're literally doing it every week. If you're having that mentality, like, you
better go tell the angels in heaven who have been screaming "Holy, holy, holy" that they're doing it wrong.
But, I mean, but also you've got it sort of brings about that mindset of Christ, of take the plank out of your own eye before you can help your brother with the speck in his own eye. Address your own massive problems first before you deal with that small tiny issue over there. You need to get your own house in order. Sorry, I've gone on a massive sort of just spiel of
the deep dive.
Goodness. Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, I think resonate with music. I mean, music is we humans, we connect to music in such a deep and profound way, and it touches us in a way that, you know, sometimes just words can't. That's, you know, and that can be taken advantage of as well. I mean, take a look at, you know, again, Protestant churches, their services are literally set up in a specific way to invoke emotion, to put people into essentially a hypnotic state, to have them, you know, shake and fall down and, you know, cry and on cue. It's literally engineered. So, and that's the danger of, you know, Christian music and worship, and, you know, what doesn't make it orthodox. But I think there's definitely a place, especially, you know, within your sphere of where you're operating, of definitely having orthodox music that isn't liturgical, but then is very good to listen to, and it's healthy to listen to, because it's proper theology, it's proper expression of emotion, and you know, what approach we should have.
I think something that I still wrestle with is, you know, when people do think of orthodoxy, of course, you know, they think of chants, they think of incense and a deep, reverent fear. Sometimes I think my music might be perceived that I don't have that, and that's why it can be confused as Protestant, because of the instruments, because of the pop sound and the modern instruments and the modern tune of my music. I think something I still wrestle with is judgment from some of my Orthodox brothers online that will claim that, you know, this sounds just like Protestant music. And it kind of sucks, because it's like, that's not my intention at all. I'm trying to go with the opposite. I'm trying to sound very Orthodox in my music, and it's just modern sounds. And of course, maybe they don't like listening to modern music, and that's the reason they're saying this. And I just think, as Orthodox, we tend to get, this is so true, we tend to get put as like inhuman. Like, people who maybe visit for liturgy who aren't Orthodox, they'll see the people during liturgy, and some of their mindsets are like, these people are weird. These people are not normal. They don't have a normal life. They don't do anything. But then they stay for coffee hour, and they actually talk to the Orthodox people, and they're like, oh, they're normal people. Like, oh, they have a normal 9 to 5. Oh, they have normal interests. He likes biking. He likes skiing. You know, he likes pizza, or whatever it is. Like, we have our normal human things, and I think we tend to get put on a pedestal of like living like monastics all the time. I mean, as we should, though. We should have a heart of a monastic, of prayer and watchfulness and quietness. But we live in the world, like you said, and there are good things in the world that are not sinful. And music is one of them. Music has been around for centuries, and I cannot imagine that if Jesus was at a party or a wedding, that there was no music. That there was no just regular music. They weren't just chanting the whole time. I don't think that was the Jewish culture. So it's a hard balance between satisfying my Orthodox brothers who are very serious about the faith, and I absolutely love and respect it, because we are too, but also them easing up to the fact that modern music can be Orthodox, and convincing them. And again, that's where I wrestle. It's like, I don't want to make any Orthodox brethren stumble in any way, making them upset that I'm making this type of music. So it's like, I have this caution when I post of saying, how Orthodox is this? Is this going to be okay where my brethren approves of this? And I can go on. And a majority love it. A majority of people do love it. But, you know, there's a few comments every here and then where I'm like, oh man, you know, I wish I could satisfy what you want. Makes sense.
But I think as well that that's the danger of social media as well, is it makes us chase after perfection when perfection doesn't exist. And that's an important lesson, especially for an aspiring artist to learn. I mean, I've come from an acting background, so I trained to be do performing arts and acting, and so I understand about sort of like what the nature of the performer. the mindset of the performer and how that affects people. And you can be on stage and think, oh, I did really well. I think I did that really well. And then you'll have a castmate come up to you just like, you were really off today. There was sort of what was going on with you. Were your head in the right space? You kept fumbling over your lines, and you have a different perspective on it. But then again, you might be on stage, doing acting things, and then say, you might think that was awful. I don't know. My head was somewhere else. I couldn't concentrate. I missed my cue. I missed my mark. And then you might have someone come up to you and just say that was such a fantastic performance. How did you? And it's the enigma of performance. It's the contradictory nature of it, of how you can think you went one way and then people think you went another way.
Yeah.
But I think what's really important for people who might be Orthodox, who are listening to this and might disagree or might not see it, I'd ask you, we are asked to test all things by which that is holy, right? Are the lyrics Orthodox? Do they hold up to Orthodox theology? And if they do, right? Why knock it? You're entering into a market with a sound that sounds like a cross between Alex Clare and Coldplay and Macklemore, that kind of sort of like country / pop genre.
Yeah.
And you're entering into a market that's overly saturated with something that's so unhealthy and not wise to listen to, because it's all on about drugs and hookers and sex. If you can find something that is similar to that and you can enjoy listening to, it isn't a problem. Be encouraging. Yeah. Even if it's not your cup of tea, if the lyrics are Orthodox, if it's done made with the right intentions, encourage people, because we need more things like this in the world. We need people to be more receptive to things because I think it also comes from the fact that Orthodoxy ingrains in us to be really protective of things and really scared of change.
Yes.
And so I think that's also why the church was also so hesitant in accepting sort of like internet things, with social media and YouTube and things like that. And it's only recently that we started to take that on. And we have to make sure that we're not changing anything within the church, but this doesn't affect the church. It's outside of the church in collaboration alongside it, but isn't associated with it. And that's important to recognize. So I encourage anyone who wants to listen to Jarren's music, please do, because it is genuinely really good music. I mean, I've had Receive His Blood on repeat.
Thanks.
I heard it. No, I'm serious. I can't stop listening to it, and it's a really good. It's a song you can sort of like tap your foot to and nod along to and sing along on the bus and make yourself look like a weirdo like I did today. Coming back from work, start singing along the bus and then get an old lady going. But it's good, man. It's really good music. You should be really proud of it. And I
appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Yeah. Where can people find your music? Tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on all platforms. You can get me on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music. Anything you can think of. I really have. With my distributors, I try to get out everywhere. So I'm everywhere. My social media pages right now, I just have an Instagram, Jarren B Music, and then I have a TikTok. You can just look up my name on that and you can see. So I don't have too much of a online presence yet. I did have a YouTube channel for a little bit. It's called Orthodox Next Gen. I deleted all my videos at first because I made them when I was just started Orthodoxy, when I was a catechumen. And I wanted to, when I realized I needed to slow down and I needed to learn a little bit, I needed to stop posting. I just need to soak as a catechumen and, be Orthodox for a little bit before I start posting more Orthodox content. So I started that. It's called Orthodox Next Gen, and I'm going to start posting on that again. So I will be up on that, and I'm going to have some of my music uploaded on there. But yeah, I'm small online right now, very, very small. So I was shocked when you found my page. I was like, what? You found my page? I'm like, this is awesome. So yeah, it's a very small presence. And of course, I only have 2 songs out right now, but I should have my 3rd one coming out right now in about 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, Ladder of Divine, isn't it?
Yes, the Ladder of Divine. And you can find clips of that on my TikTok and Instagram. Just me and my guitar kind of rocking it. But this one I think is going to be my favorite one. And if you like to receive His blood, I think you're going to like Ladder of Divine. And I think I'm going to have a special feature on it from Reason Belief, which I'm super excited. I don't know if we can keep it a secret, or you want to wait to tell them?
No, go on. Why not? Why not?
Okay, yeah. So we were talking about my song earlier, and Sam came up with an amazing idea. And of course, the song is about the ladder of the divine, and of course, the song's about repentance and going up the ladder, going down the ladder, Satan throwing arrows at us, Stephen's throwing arrows, and being on empty, keep going till we finally get there one day, till we can finally hear, well done, my good and faithful servant. But this song really talks about the warfare that you can experience as an Orthodox Christian and living out the ladder of the divine of ascent. So that's kind of what the song's about. But Sam had an amazing idea of using his amazing British accent to give a quote. So if you want to give the quote from the Ladder of Divine Ascent, if you would like to kind of give a little sneak peek of something.
Yeah, sure. Let me pull it up for you. There we go. Do not be surprised that you fall every day. Do not give up, but stand your ground courageously. And assuredly, the angel who guards you will honor your patience. While a wound is still fresh and warm, it is easy to heal. But old, neglected, and festering ones are hard to cure, and require for their care much treatment, cutting, plastering, and cauterization. Many from long neglect become incurable, but with God, all things are possible.
Yes, so I think that quote right there, and of course I haven't read the whole book. It's a very hard writing to sit down and. I don't want to say you have to be almost at a monastic level to read the Ladder of this Divine Ascent, but it's hard. It is a hard reading, and it's hard to understand sometimes. And it's what we're all called to, though. So I encourage everyone to read it if they can, if they have any access to it. I have not read the full thing. I've read glimpses, but I understand the gist of it and what the especially in that Ladder of the Ascent is my favorite icon. I really want to get a huge one of that and put it in my living room. So I'm trying to find one of those right now. But yeah,
it'll be good, man. I think it'd be. And when's that going to be released? Then, do you think?
Should be. What's the date today?
21st.
July 20th. I would say no later than August 5th, somewhere around there. So I'm meeting with my producer next Monday. This coming Monday, and we're gonna get going on that. And I'm hoping that we'll have it out as fast as we can, you guys. And of course, I would love feedback. You can find me on the social medias and tell me what you think about my music. And it's encouraging to hear my Orthodox brothers and sisters tell me that they're looking for this kind of music if they are, and this keeps me going, and this keeps it fun for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I just want to encourage you in what you're doing, because you're doing something that's really, really good. I think you're doing something that is noble, and it's needed as well, especially in a market that's so secular and associated with secular music. And I think you need to be open to those things. You need to be open to change, and you need to be open to, as long as it's good, as long as it's holy, as long as it's in line with orthodoxy and the mindset of what we believe in the church, and that's what's important. at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, we were planning on talking about people being received into the church, you know, inquirers and catechumens, but I'm just conscious of the fact we've been going for 3 hours and 15 minutes.
Yes.
2.5 hours of worth were your
Yes.
testimony.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's up to you, bro. I mean, we can either carry on the conversation or we can end it there. I can play a song again and we'll leave it. It's up to you.
Well, speaking of time, I do have to use the bathroom, so I think this could be a good time to wrap it up right now. But I seriously enjoyed my time on here, and I hope to be on here again sometime and have a different discussion topic about something we could go more in depth about in Orthodoxy. This has been an honor, and I love your channel, and I believe that you're advancing the kingdom by doing this and reaching the folks online, and so I love what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with that, I think we'll play the song again and then we'll close it out. How about that?
Sounds good, brother.
Cool. Well, let's hit play.
All right.
I fell off the narrow road again. I'm tired of the sin I'm living in. Who's gonna save me? I don't know. I'm down on my knees, I fell again. Who's gonna save this wretched man? Can anyone hear me down below? Don't despair, don't give up. We have a physician, receive his love. Death is lost, the cross has won. Partake in his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. A holy supper to ease my pain. Leaves without blemish or a stain. How could I ever get enough? These gifts that I come to take again can save a not so holy man. The water of life I need to grow. I look up to the sky and I hide your face from mine. But now I'm yours and I won't run away. Don't despair, no, don't give up. You have a physician, receive his love. Death has lost, the cross has won. Taking his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. And I leave behind my pride and let go of what's inside. I'm finally yours, I'll never be the same. Don't despair, no, don't give up. You have a physician, receive his love. Death has lost, the cross has won. On taking his body, receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood. Receive his blood.
Yeah, boy.
That's what we're talking about. Just wait for the next one, man. It's gonna be a banger.
That's a banger, mate. It's an absolute banger. So you guys go check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you find your music, YouTube Music, all the music. And yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. It has truly been really good for me to hear your testimony, to hear your journey, talk about your music. Please keep going, and support Jarren. Go follow him on TikTok. Subscribe to him on Spotify and YouTube Music and Apple Music and all that kind of stuff. Listen to his songs, listen to him on repeat. Give him the moolah. Give him the dollar bills, y'all, to make his dream come true, becoming, a full-time musician,
Yes.
And I expect, when you do your first show in the UK, I expect a VIP pass.
You will be backstage. You'll
Good,
be backstage, man.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in to another live stream. Stay tuned to the channel. Up next on my videos I'm going to be releasing, I am going to be interviewing Anna, who is a Japanese Orthodox Christian who runs the YouTube channel Worshipful Heart. I'll be airing that interview probably later this week, maybe the weekend, depending on how the editing goes, because it's going to be pre-recorded. And stay tuned for next week on Wednesday, because I will be interviewing Father Peter Hears on the channel live, which is going to be an absolute banger. So looking forward to that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.
Thank you.